The February 16th, 2021 regular meeting of the Colerain Township Zoning Commission. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. A word of welcome to all this evening, to those within the chambers and those out in the lobby. We are pleased to see you here, as well as those watching at home. We ask everyone to please silence their various technological devices, your cell phones or what have you. Put them on vibrate or what have you. And commission members and members of the administration, if you'll make sure that your microphones are turned on. Mr. Iona, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Faring? Here. Mr. Grody?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. McMullen?
Here.
Oh, and Mr. Gehring, excuse me.
Okay. And Mr. Gehring is absent, so we have seated Mr. Wilson in his place. Okay. Welcome, Mr. Wilson. The next item is the oath of office, and Mr. Iona, would you take the lead on that and give us a little bit of a description of what's going to take place there?
Okay, so due to the protocols for the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with Governor DeWine's issuance of restrictions on social distancing, as well as in accordance with procedures passed by Colerain Township Board of Trustees, we will be holding a hearing as best we can in accordance with all those protocols and procedures. At this time, we have 10 people in this room. We will have no more than 10 people in this room. We have an area out in the rotunda where we will be viewing, where residents or interested parties can view all of the information that's being presented here tonight. All of this information is also available live online at Waycross Media. The way that we will be doing the public testimony, public hearing, and public input tonight is that we will, as I said before, always have 10 people in this room, and then we will use the rotunda and then any additional rooms that we have outside of this room to hold people, and those rooms will also have no more than 10 people. When individual members of the public come in to provide testimony or input, they will do so in a manner that they will come through the atrium doors to this room, and then one of us, myself, will go ahead and hold that door open, thus creating 9 people. And when that person comes in, it will be 10 people. And when they leave, I will then switch places with them and so forth, so that we are always staying in compliance with the protocols and procedures set out forth for this meeting.
And if you could comment on a few words about the oath of office for members.
Yes, so we will provide, every time a member of the public comes into the meeting, we will have the oath of office provided by our legal counsel.
Okay.
For each individual as they come in.
Okay, but we also have to have a swearing in this evening of new members.
Yes, we do.
Okay, if you could address that as to whom that would be, and then we'll move forward from there.
That would be Mr. Wilson as our new member, yes. Mr. Faring continues to be a board member.
Okay.
So I don't think we need to swear him in.
So this evening with us is the Township's legal representative, Mr. Dieters. So Mr. Dieters, if you would administer the oath of office to Mr. Wilson, please.
Just give me 1 second here. I was unaware that the oath of office was happening, but.
I didn't do this last year, so I think you can do it
Yeah.
So
Is that okay if they did that?
I believe so.
legal
I don't
counsel?
believe you should be sworn in again unless this is a new term.
It is a new term.
Okay, we can do a new swearing in
Yeah,
then.
swear him in.
And isn't Mr. Faring?
Mr. Faring, yeah,
term
we'll
also?
swear him in as well.
Just give me just 1 second here. I apologize. This was not on my agenda that I received. Okay. So if you could both raise your right hands. And I state your name,
Mark Faring,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I shall support the Constitution of the United States
I shall support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and shall faithfully and honestly discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of a member
of a member
of the Colerain Township Zoning Commission.
of the Colerain Township Zoning Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dieters, and Mr. Wilson, Mr. Faring. Welcome back, and welcome too, okay? At this time, we need to elect officers for next year. The two positions that are open is that of chairperson and vice chairperson. At this time, I ask for a motion to open the floor for nominations for chairperson. So we need a motion to open that floor.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. So the floor is open for nominations for chairperson, and is there anyone who wishes to make a nomination for this position?
I'd like to nominate Laurie.
Okay.
Chairman.
I was going to nominate Mr. Grody to
Okay,
continue.
well, first of all, do you accept the nomination?
No.
Okay. Are there other nominations? Because we dealt with the one regarding yourself first.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Grody.
Okay, and I will accept the nomination. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we need a motion to close the nomination for chairperson position. Okay, second?
I'll second.
Second. Do we need a roll call, or can we do a voice vote?
We'll do a roll call.
Roll call, let's do a roll call.
Okay. The motion is for Mr. Grody to serve as chairman of the zoning commission, and the roll call vote is as follows. Commissioner Faring,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Grody.
Yes. Okay, now we need a motion to open the floor for the position of vice chairperson. Could we have that motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to open the floor for position of vice chair. Do we have some nominations, please?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Faring.
Do you accept the nomination?
I'll do vice chair, yes.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we need a motion to close the nomination portion of this, for vice chairperson. Can we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we close.
A second?
I'll second.
Okay. Can we have a roll call?
Roll call vote. The motion is for Mr. Faring to serve as the vice chair. The vote is Commissioner Grody.
I'm sorry?
Commissioner Grody, your vote.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall. Excuse
Wilson?
me, I'm sorry. Commissioner Wilson, I'm sorry.
Yes.
And then Commissioner Faring.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the nominations, and Mr. Faring, thank you for stepping up. Now I'm going to tell you I'm taking a 6-month leave of absence, and you are going to be the chairperson.
I know where you live, Al.
You all heard that, that's on tape, okay. The next item is approval of the minutes from our December 15th meeting. If everyone would please take a look at those, and if you see any needed changes, corrections, additions, deletions, would you please state them?
Mr. Chairperson,
Yes?
we do not have minutes from the December 15th meeting.
We're going to postpone the minutes for the December 15th
Okay,
meeting.
I
We're
thought
up
I
to date
had,
on the minutes.
I had them in my packet, I thought. Nope.
I don't think we sent those out, no. We're going to go ahead and postpone those.
Maybe I need to be replaced already for old memory. Okay, so we will just table that. Thank you, Ms. McMullen, for bringing that to our attention. Okay, any public address that you know of, Mr. Iona?
No public address at this time.
Okay. Any final development plans?
No final developments plan submitted at this time.
Okay. That brings us into the public hearing section, and the first case is ZA 2021-01, the Abbeytown Subdivision. And Mr. Iona, do you have a presentation for the staff, please?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Michael Iona. I'll be presenting on behalf of staff. Tonight, we have a resubmitted application. The applicant is MI Homes, and this is commonly, or better known as the Abbeytown development. The location is an approximate 29.8 acre area, and that's located on the north side of Kemper Road, approximately 1,300 feet from where it intersects with Pippin Road. The submitted request is a zone map amendment from R4 Suburban Medium Residential District and R6 Urban Residential District to a PDR Planned Development Residential District. And the applicant proposes to construct 68 detached single-family homes within a planned development if approved. Before I begin, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the planned development approval process. It's a little bit different from a straight zoning process. It's a two-part process. The first part is the preliminary development plan. The second part is the final development plan. The intent of the preliminary development plan is to provide kind of more of a base overview of the proposed development. We get into things like intensity and density. We do talk about utilities and things like that, but it's intended to be more of a high-level kind of overview of the plan with some finer details. The final development plan is where a lot of those details really come together. We get the nuts and bolts on, everything about the plan. Tonight, we are here for the preliminary development plan. The application has been submitted. Staff does their review. In this situation, the Zoning Commission conducts a public hearing, and their action is a recommendation, either favorable or unfavorable, to the Board of Trustees. And it is the Board of Trustees who takes final action to either approve or deny in this situation for this application. For the final development plan, as you all probably remember or know, the Zoning Commission takes final action. There is a little history on this site. In 2005, there was a subdivision proposed. It's called the Salonica. It was called the Salonica Reserve. This is a preliminary development plan was submitted and approved by Hamilton County, and this was a by right subdivision, meaning that they came in, they looked at the zoning, they met the zoning, and as such, they could develop what was within the current zoning district. So the site is zoned R4, and a little bit of it zoned R6. The lot sizes that you see here within this plan all met that requirement, and as such, they did not need any special approvals. They could go to Hamilton County through a by right subdivision process, meaning that they could go in and develop this subdivision. The same rules and land rights exist today. So if somebody comes in and wants to do a development, provided it meets the zoning regulations, as well as the requirements of all the different review bodies at Hamilton County, including the engineer, soil and water, all the things that you see on your staff report, it can be done by right. In 2019, there was a submitted application for Abbeytown. The application you have tonight is an amended application of that application, and that was a preliminary development plan and zone change for a PDR for a 68-unit development, similar to what you're seeing tonight. That was the Zoning Commission provided an unfavorable recommendation of that application, and the Board of Trustees subsequently voted to deny the application. A lot of the issues were based around traffic and access and drainage and utilities. So here you see the site in question. Again, it's a 29.8 It's an approximate 29-acre site. It is located, again, along the north side of Kemper Road. And here you can see the site in question is currently occupied by vacant land. Land uses within the surrounding areas include rural land to the south. You have these larger lot kind of residential single-family homes located to the north. To the east, there's also a larger lot single-family home located, larger lot single-family homes to the west, and then there's a larger lot single-family home located to the east. A portion of the area located immediately to the east is currently occupied by a church/school. There's also a church located within close proximity to the site. Immediately east of the site, kind of on the south side, is the Colerain Township Fire Department. The area to the south is currently occupied by vacant rural land. Within proximity to the east, there's a church. And then the peripheral areas to the east, the north, the east, and the west are currently occupied by single-family residential dwellings. These are your kind of more moderate to high density, if you will, suburban dwellings. These the lot sizes in this area typically center around like your 7,500 square feet range. The area to the north is around your 10,000 square feet range, so it's still in that moderate size. And then over here, this is the Hunterston subdivision, and those are around 1/4 acre lots. Here's a picture of the site in question looking toward the east along Kemper Road. This is the approximate location of where the proposed access point to the subdivision is. This is a picture looking towards the southeast toward the site. Again, you can see it's occupied by vacant land. Up here in the middle of the picture, you can see behind these, the wooded area is Kemper Road. And again, that access point kind of comes in here at that lower slope or grade area. Here's a picture looking to the east towards Kemper Road again. And again, you can see here where the approximate access point is around this, between these two telephone poles here. This is a picture of the site looking to the west. Here's a picture of the site looking towards the northwest. And as you're looking through these pictures, if you look at the submitted development plan with those vacant areas on the site, you can see that the proposal is really to use a lot of the vacant area, or the undeveloped land, and leave a lot of the existing green space. And then here is another picture looking towards the west across the site in question. With regard to zoning, the site in question, along with the areas to the north and the west, as well as to the south, are currently zoned R4. The R4 zone is a moderate density residential district. A portion of the site in question, a very small portion to the east, is currently zoned R6. And the R6 is actually an urban residential district. It permits detached single-family homes all the way up to 4-family multifamily homes. And that's a moderate, at the single-family level, that's a very moderate to high-density single-family area. And then the peripheral area to the west is currently zoned planned development residential. And the intent, and then that's the same zoning district that the applicant is proposing for the site in question. And the intent of a planned development district is as follows. It's really to allow for flexibility in zoning requirements in order to achieve a higher quality development. It's to provide recreational facilities, preserve open space, and preserving landscape. It's to encourage sound planning principles as it pertains to the arrangement of buildings, the preservation of open space, and to the utilization of the existing topography and other site features. The intent of planned development districts is also to obtain creative and coordinated designs that exist in harmony with the surrounding areas. And then finally, it's to create a development that conforms to the goals and objectives set forth in the comp plan. As it pertains to the comprehensive plan, the site is located in the Beavis Pleasant Run area. The comp plan basically states for this area that single-family residential uses are appropriate. It also states that residential uses within this area may expand, but that this expansion should involve, or will involve the infill of several large lots that exist in the character area. And in these areas, new homes should be single-family detached housing in subdivisions that fit with the surrounding developments. Relevant development policies for this area include to encourage additional connections to the sewer system and to develop a property maintenance program. For new developments that include roadway connections, to the maximum extent possible, they should have as few cul-de-sacs as possible and incorporate elements of pedestrian connectivity, including sidewalks and trails into their plan. Land use guidelines also include creating methods of dealing with stormwater management through the use of green spaces, minimal lot coverage, and landscaping to absorb water runoff. Land use guidelines also include that the density of any new residential use should reflect development of similar uses within that character area. And then that attached housing should not occur. Basically, no townhome should occur in the Beavis Pleasant Run area. The submitted development plan indicates the following information. Development of a planned community containing 68 detached single-family residential dwelling units. The overall density of the proposed development is 2.35 units per acre. They're showing the provision of 8.47 acres of open space. The plan indicates that natural areas throughout the development will be preserved. Proposed development setbacks for the single-family homes are as follows. A front yard setback of 25 feet on lots 1 through 13, 30 feet for lots 14 through 68, side yard setbacks of 5 feet to 10 feet, and then a rear yard setback of 35 feet. The establishment of a minimum lot size of 7,800 square feet. Vehicular access is provided off of Kemper Road. There's a stub street to the site located to the east. And there are cul-de-sacs to the north of the development where topography would prevent it from connecting to other development in the area. There's also the provision of 2 detention ponds located on the west side of the property. And then there is an existing entrance, or excuse me, there is a proposed entrance sign located on the west side of the access point off of Kemper Road. Sidewalk is shown throughout the development. It will be on both sides of the street. The submitted development plan does not show sidewalk located along the Kemper Road frontage. Sidewalk is required per the requirements of the zoning resolution. The applicant has submitted a request for a waiver that will be heard at the upcoming Board of Trustees meeting. If that waiver is granted, they would pay the fee in lieu of providing sidewalk along the Kemper Road frontage. The applicant does propose to address this connectivity issue from the east side to the west side of their site by taking in, carrying the sidewalk connection through the development and then actually, up through lot 17 and then along the parcel currently occupied by the fire department. The applicant, and I think this was brought up at the last zoning commission meeting, there's a lot of topography issues along Kemper Road, in addition to significant safety concerns with pedestrian crossing located in that area. So if you look, this slide here shows a little bit more in detail what's proposed. So if you go to the terminus of Abbeytown Drive, kind of looking back, that's here. They would connect the sidewalk through lot 17 and then along the along the parcel owned by currently occupied by the fire department. And that would be in addition to that fee in lieu. If that waiver is granted, they'd also pay into the sidewalk fund, as well as providing that east to west connection internal to the development. With regard to landscaping, the applicant shows the provision of street trees throughout the development. They do provide landscaping located along the west boundary line, and then there's also a landscaping buffer provided along the north and east part of the development. And then there's some additional landscaping with the subdivision signage. And here you can see the landscape buffer located on the west property line. The areas in yellow are those areas where the applicant has increased the amount of landscaping that was provided at the previous application. And then here you can see a up-close detail of the landscaping provided along the north and east side of the property. And that location is the same as proposed in the 2019 application. So that does it for the submitted development plan. In order to accomplish the submittal, the applicant is requesting the following. They're requesting a zone change from R4 and R6 to plan development, residential, and preliminary development plan approval to allow for the development of the 68 single-family dwelling units. And the applicant is also requesting a variations to allow for a reduction in the area and height requirements to allow for a minimum lot size of 7,800 square feet. The underlying district is 14,000 square feet in the R4, and then a minimum lot width of 65 feet. It's 80 feet in the underlying district. A front yard setback of 25 feet where it is 35 in the underlying district, and a side yard setback of 5 feet where it is 10 feet in the underlying district. As it pertains to outside agency review, traffic impact analysis has been conducted by the applicant. It was submitted to Hamilton County engineers. It was attached within the staff packet, and that traffic impact analysis was accepted by the Hamilton County engineers. And number two, a letter was also submitted by the applicant showing that sewer is present and accessible on the site. And then attached within the staff packet were comments provided by other agencies in charge of review, and none of those comments were found to impact the ability of the project to occur. I do want to provide a development comparison from the current development to what's being proposed. And if you look at the current development standard, again, it's 14,000 square feet. And what's being proposed is a lot range from 7,800 square feet to 18,392 square feet. That's an average of 10,318 square feet. When you go down to the overall density, the density of what would be allowed under the current zoning is 3.11 units per acre. And the proposed standard is actually less than that at 2.38 units per acre. And you're probably wondering, well, how's that possible when these lot sizes are so small? What that really comes down to is the open space. Unlike a standard development, a lot of the lot area that would be dedicated to the by right proposal, for example, that was shown previously, has been basically transferred from somebody's backyard to preserved open space and preserved topography on the site. So there's a significantly greater proportion of open space being preserved within the proposed development than what would be permitted under a current standard development or the standard development that was approved in 2005. And again, if you look at the Salonica Reserve and the Abbeytown subdivision, again, the big difference here is that 8.75 acres of green space, and that's really where, while you do have smaller lot sizes, you do have smaller lot widths and reduced setbacks, The intent of that is really to play with the topography and preserve the existing open space and natural spaces on the site, while keeping that similar density. And I think this slide really illustrates that. So on the right, you have the Salonica by right development, where you have, less than 1 acre of green space preserved, and, you have those 14,000 square feet lot sizes. And then here on the left side, you have, while you have smaller lot sizes, you do have a lot of the topography or steeper portions of the site preserved, as well as the natural areas on the site preserved. So again, the two requests are the zone change and then the variations to allow for the reduction in area and heights. The statutes for the approval of a PD are as follows. First, the PD should be consistent with the land use plan and the comp plan. 2, it must be found that the proposed uses will have a beneficial impact on the community. Number 3, that the internal streets and primary and secondary roads are properly connected with the surrounding network. Basically, is there good access to the site? Does the site show good access? Number 4, that the site actually is accessible from public roads. And number 5, that there is a plan for those open space areas within the site. Is that, basically, what are you doing with those open space areas that are shown? Is there an HOA that will take care of those spaces? Number 7, that the preliminary development plan is consistent with the intent and purpose of the zoning resolution. And number 7, that the preliminary development plan has gone out to review agencies and they don't have any issues with the proposed development. As it pertains to variations, as I discussed earlier, the applicant is seeking a variation from the underlying, the standards of the underlying district. And that's where I discussed the area and height requirements. The zoning ordinance specifically states that, exceptions and variations from the design standards provided by the base zoning district, in this case in R4 and R6, may and should be granted by the zoning commission, as well as the Board of Township trustees, when it is determined that due to certain design elements, natural features, and public amenities, that those exceptions are warranted. So do the merits of the plan and what's being proposed warrant those variations and exceptions. Based on all of this, staff is recommending approval of the zone change as well as the preliminary development plan to allow for the construction of the 68 single-family dwelling units, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the front facade of all dwelling units contain an element of stone, brick, or other masonry unit. B, that the minimum housing shall be 1,400 square feet for one-story residential dwellings and 1,600 square feet for two-story residential dwellings. All homes shall feature a basement. Said basement shall not be considered part of the floor area established within condition 2. So that 1,400 and 1,600 are exclusive of the basement. D, that a plan for the intent and treatment of the open space areas be included within the final development plan. Said plan shall address the manner in which common open space areas will be developed or treated, which includes one or more of the following options: keeping it natural and maintained, providing a playground, provision of paved walking trails, or the provision of planting and landscaping. E, that a homeowner's landscape, or HOA, be formed to manage and care for the common open space, retention ponds, fencing, and vegetative buffers found in the plan. F, that the maintenance of the vegetative buffers, fencing, and open space areas shown on the preliminary development plan and or final development plan be included and outlined within the HOA documents of the Abbeytown subdivision. Maintenance shall be conducted in a manner that promotes and fosters the intent of the buffer to screen the new development from existing adjacent development. G, that a street lighting district be set up for this development in accordance with the standards of Colerain Township. H, that a waiver be granted for the sidewalk connection along Kemper Road. I, that future sale of the panhandle portion of the tract be made to adjacent property owners and only to adjacent property owners to the east or west. And that should be permitted as an administrative modification to the development plan. No need to bring that all the way back through the PDP and FDP process. J, that the proposed development meets applicable standards and regulations for other development review agency. And then finally, 2, staff is recommending approval of the variations from the underlying area and height standards for the R4 and R6 zoning district. And this is based on the following. Staff does find the plan to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. The proposed character, density, and form of the proposal, as conditioned, is generally consistent with the land uses found in the immediate areas, which consist of moderate to high density single-family residential dwellings, churches, a fire station, and then single-family larger lot development. Number 2, the proposed zone change does provide a benefit to the community through the provision of new homes within a development design that preserves and protects natural open space rather than clear-cutting the land for development. Number 3, the proposed street extensions do connect to the existing street network in a manner that's consistent with required findings of the zoning resolution. The plan specifically shows access from Kemper Road, and it does provide a stub street to the property located to the east. The cul-de-sacs on the north part of the plan make sense because there's not much development to connect to, as those areas are occupied by larger lot single-family residential uses. Number 4, the proposed development, again, when we talk about access from the external street network, the proposed development does have access from Kemper Road. The applicant has gone and conducted a traffic study that was submitted and found to be valid by the Hamilton County engineer regarding the proposed access. Number 5, the proposal is consistent with the intent of the purpose of the zoning resolution for planned developments. And then number 6, as it pertains to the variations, staff does find that these variations from the underlying height requirements or area and height requirements to be appropriate. The intent of the zoning resolution for planned developments is specifically to allow for creative designs that protect and preserve open space. The submitted development plan effectively clusters development in certain areas of the site by using smaller lots and larger preserved open spaces, thus necessitating the proposed variations. The result is a development that is not only impactful in the preservation of open space and natural land, but it is also less dense at 2.38 units per acre than the 3.11 units per acre that could be permitted by right in the R4 district. Furthermore, clustering of development is also consistent with best practices for fiscal policies of the township regarding street maintenance. Shorter lot widths, what's proposed is 65 versus 80. Shorter lot widths require less road maintenance down the road, and over the long run, a considerable cost in the upkeep of the new residential development will be deflected. So that is all I have for the staff presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Iona? Mr. Iona, on condition 8H, that a waiver be granted for sidewalk connection along Kemper Road. In your presentation, you had referenced that they were going to, they proposed to carry a sidewalk off the Stub Street and snake it around lot number 17 and then up alongside the property owned by the fire department. Does that need to be in writing in here somewhere?
That's been submitted that's one of the plans. It's
Okay.
submitted within the development packet.
Okay. And my second question, in that with that sidewalk coming out by the fire department, isn't there a sidewalk in front of the fire department and down to the intersection of Pippin and Kemper for children to cross that intersection if they want to walk to school?
I am not aware of any sidewalk at this time. That doesn't mean it's not there.
Okay.
It's just not something that I noted when
Okay,
I was out there.
all right. Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Iona. We will now move to the applicant to make a presentation. Before you do, sir, are all three of you here in relation to Abbeytown? You are also, sir? Okay. Mr. Dieters, would you please swear them in so that they may testify?
You can do one at a time as they come up.
I think we could do all three of them at the same time.
Anybody who's in the room, I think we can do at the same time. It's just as they come in, we'll.
Just raise your right hand, please.
We are counsel, we record.
Right. It would just be Brad, I believe. The applicant would need to,
Two of you are not going to speak?
as counsel, I don't believe they need to swear in.
Okay.
Brad, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Sir, if you, as you approach the microphone, if you would lower your mask, please, and give us your name, address, who you're affiliated with, and could you please spell your last name?
Okay. I'm Brad Austing with MI Homes. Last name is Austing. Address for the company is 9349 Waterstone Boulevard, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay. And sir, before you begin, I would like to ask you, as part of your presentation this evening, and perhaps you may want to think about this for a moment, but could you bring this commission up to date as to what is different in the application tonight than what we saw back in November of 2019? And also how you have addressed the concerns of those who were here for public presentation back in November of 2019, which basically involved like things flooding, retention ponds, sidewalk, traffic issues, and so on and so forth. So if you could roll all that together so we have a good understanding of what's different about this tonight than what we had in 2019. Okay?
I will. I look forward to it, actually, and because we did dig in and really try to solve some of the major issues and concerns. The plan largely is designed is very close to what you've seen before. It's these big issues that really were addressed that you mentioned, and as I go through, become evident that we've addressed each and every one of those.
Okay.
I'll just remind you who MI Homes is. We were founded in 1976. We are a publicly traded builder on the New York Stock Exchange. We do operate in 14 major cities. We built about $3 billion in homes last year, about 450 locally. We've been in business about 45 years now. Next slide, please. So what that success does in financial strength is we do offer really the best warranty in the business. You'll even notice we have a 15-year structural warranty that's transferable. You buy a house from us, sell it within 15 years, your buyer will get that warranty. We have 21 active communities. You'll see Abbeytown down there in the red. We'd like that to be the 22nd active community with your support. Mike showed this. This is kind of the color landscape plan. You'll see a great little street tree program, as well as the heavy buffering on the west side up against the Flam and Air property as you come in the main entrance. And then, of course, the cover in the back corner next to the church. We'll point out, and we'll talk a little bit more about stormwater. Initially, we showed those blue areas as retention basins, meaning they will hold water all the time, and then the storage capacity for the stormwater would come on top of those. We're working with ultimately with the Hamilton County stormwater engineer, and we're going to try to make those dry basins. So we'll just increase the volume, so all that water is in there, like let's say 8 feet deep. Now all of a sudden that'll be available for extra stormwater that you wouldn't have during a wet pond situation, which should help some of the concerns downstream with stormwater. So we're going to try to upsize those essentially. Again, there's another look. Mike kind of showed all the green space we have. Even though we've got smaller lots than the underside, and we're really preserving the natural features of the site and creating 29% green space where otherwise there would be none required under straight zoning. Look at the technical landscape plan. You'll just see really how much we beefed up the western landscaping at the request of Mr. Flam since the last time you saw us. I'll show you that in more detail on another slide. Again, sales pricing. Our pricing is going to be base price around $325,000, and we think the houses will come in between $325,000 and $400,000. You look to the left there at the Hunterston resales. They're running about $257,000. To the north, resales around $144,000. To the east there, resales are around $149,000. And then down at the bottom right-hand corner, around $189,000. So At 3.25 to 400,000, we're really well above most of the resales in the area. We are going to offer 10 different housing floor plans, but they each have 4 elevations, so there'll be 40 elevations in total. And again, estimated base pricing around $325,000, with the ultimate as sales price estimated between $3.25 and $400,000. Want some clarity around the sidewalk. In the lower left-hand corner there, Mike, if you can point to it, that dashed line. That essentially is coming from our property and will run down to Hunterston. And then from there to the right, that boxed out area is the heavy topo area. And there's a 40-foot drop from Kemper down to the base of those homes. And I'll show you a cross-section of that. But essentially, we're proposing to run in yellow sidewalk double sides, go to that last lot 17. And a little clarification what Mike said in their application, we're actually running to the firehouse. And then the plan is for us to write a check for $75,000. So that's our allocation for the sidewalk waiver. And I'll show you another slide. We estimate the off-site sidewalk that the township would put in on property we don't own, obviously the property from us to Hunterston, and of course the firehouse we don't own, that will cost about $40,000 of the $75,000, which will leave over $30,000 to continue on a sidewalk, which you mentioned, to go over to the actual intersection of Kemper and Pippin. So that sidewalk, I talked to staff, and I think that's the plan, and that is within our application. Next slide. So here's another look at the sidewalk conditions. Top slide, Mike, point to all the topo lines there, right in there. And that just basically falls off Kemper right off the edge of the road. Then down there, you'll see a cross section, and you'll see the top of our house, and that's down in the valley. And then up, if you go up to that hill, you see how steep it is. I think that's like a 40-foot drop. In a very dangerous situation to have the sidewalk up there with the kids and that kind of topo, and it's really physically very challenging. And so we think the safer alternative plan to swing in to the sidewalk system, get the kids off of Kemper, which of course is 50 miles an hour, in a very dangerous, steep situation. So once they come around and go up to the fire station, now you've got a short distance to Pippin. So the cars won't be fully accelerated to 50 miles an hour when they come from that light. Where they're really going to pick up speed is coming towards our entrance. And so we think it's a better, safer plan for the sidewalk to be off of Kemper Road. And again, you'll see that number, $75,750 is our donation. And you can go to the next slide, Mike. And we have a little calculation there. Our internal calculation should read $10 a square foot, but at 1,035 feet for the off-site sidewalk, we estimate that would be about $41,400 out of $75,000. So you're approaching almost $35,000 to do further, so the township could do further sidewalk improvements, heading from the fire station up Pippin and towards Kemper in that intersection up there. A lot of development oversight. The first two primary ones are really zoning, and that's you folks here tonight and your recommendation, and ultimately the trustees. But the Hamilton County engineer, they're really in charge of Kemper Road and the design there and our connection to it. Hamilton County Public Works is really in charge of stormwater and approving stormwater. That's really not technically a zoning concern, but ultimately they'll approve our design plans to make sure the stormwater functions properly and doesn't flood downstream. Metropolitan Sewer District, obviously in charge of the sewer. OEPA and Army Corps of Engineers weigh in on stormwater as well. Duke Energy, of course, approves all the gas, electric plans. And then ultimately when we go to build homes, building permits will be pulled through the Hamilton County Building Inspections Department. So they'll be in charge of house quality oversight. So last time you'll see a big concern over stormwater, and these are two slides where our detention basin's outlet into the existing creek, which is beyond, kind of in those woods you see in that first slide back there, and that stream runs between Flam and his neighbor's ours property, and our stormwater will discharge into that existing stream, but at no greater flow than what is currently happening. And then by adjusting the retention basin detention, we can probably further help this. But the real concern is how their stormwater is functioning today. and I'll show you a few slides. But if you notice, this is the lower area of Mr. Flam's yard, just next to the creek. So the flooding is being backed up by the driveway shared with ours in the back. This is not flooding that's flooding his house. This is flooding a lower area next to the creek in his yard, well away from his house. So these are his pictures. And go to the next slide, please. So just a quick quote. We did submit our stormwater plans to Mohammed Islam, who's in charge of stormwater engineering for Hamilton County, and I'll read it for you. I have reviewed the Exhibit 33 and the drainage area map for the project. The preliminary detention calculations for the project follow the Hamilton County stormwater regulations. The final review of the detention pond size, location, and storm sewer will be finalized once all stormwater calculations and improvement plans are submitted. Now, final plans are not part of this process. Those are part of the final development plan and construction drawings that get submitted to the county. So that's a technical review item, not so much a zoning, but you can see the effort we've made to fully engage the county, specifically this site, to make sure all stormwater concerns are satisfied based on final design. The other thing I'll point out is, last thing, there is no chapter in the Colerain Township zoning resolution regulating stormwater management, not a zoning matter. Next slide, please. So we did meet with Mr. Flam. Dan Unger set a meeting. We met at the firehouse to talk through the concerns around stormwater. After that meeting, we agreed at that meeting. After that meeting, I contacted Mr. Flam and asked him to contact his neighbors to see if it'd be all right for our engineer to go on site, walk the storm route, and take a look at the existing storm structures. They agreed, and our engineer walked the site. That was on January 7th, just a couple months ago. And the last rainfall before he walked on site was 2/100ths of an inch. So it's barely measurable, quarter inch maybe, not a big rain event. Mr. Flam's getting flooding, he's saying when rain events are 2 inches or more, so big rains. But go ahead, so I want to point out the flooding route, or the storm route. So where our retention basins are going to be, or detention basins, it flows, hits the creek in between Flam property, that next area, and our property down the creek. Now, the white line you see going up through there, that is a shared drive by Gloria R., Flam, and Paul Air. So they share that driveway. The driveway next to it, paralleling it, that services Moat and Jeff Air. And then under each one of those driveways, as the storm's flowing across there's storm pipes underneath each one of those. And the water's supposed to flow under each driveway in a storm pipe. And then it goes to where the arrow turns down the page, and ultimately there's a storm structure down there that serves Hunterston Subdivision. And then ultimately that water gets piped into that lake down there in the lower left-hand corner, which is Hunterston. So we walked the site to see what the conditions are and see if we can't understand why they are getting this flooding. So let's walk through those slides and existing conditions out there. Again, this is their storm system, so they have to maintain it. This storm system is not a responsibility of the county, it's not a responsibility of the township, it's a responsibility for the owners that live in those lots right there. So what's going on? This is the first point. The water comes through the creek from our Abbeytown site and hits the first pipe on the right-hand side of the driveway. You can see that it's fully vegetated in, so water can't flow. Additionally, you can see the pipe, the water, this is after an insignificant rain event, is standing still, which means the water is getting blocked downstream of this pipe, right? It can't get into the pipe. And so it's presenting resistance, and that's why you get the flooding, the water pushing back up into his yard. Next slide. This is the outfall on the other side of his driveway. So that concrete is that shared drive. This is the outfall of that pipe I just showed you. You'll see where the water is easily halfway up in that pipe. So that pipe has lost half its capacity for flow, which means that the creek bed below them is higher than the pipe, providing resistance. It's all silted in, or it's grown with vegetation or what have you, but clearly this section of the pipe is not flowing as it should, especially in a rain event, and even providing a stagnant water situation for them. Next slide. This is the inlet pipe to the secondary driveway you see, and you can barely see the pipe. All that debris, sticks, logs are in there. Obviously not functioning. You can't get water in the pipe. It's completely clogged. So again, they're not maintaining their system, which is their responsibility, and it's causing them problems. There's no doubt. Next slide, please. Here's the outfall of that pipe. Again, the pipe is fully submerged or halfway submerged. So again, that means the downstream elevation is higher, restricting water from flowing freely out of that pipe as it should to its ultimate destination. So again, this needs to be corrected by them. It's their storm system, and if they don't want flooding, they need to, fix it, and so the water flows properly. Next slide. And then it gets to the Hunterston catch basin here before it gets piped to the lake. So it flows into here in this concrete channel, and then gets piped in a pipe that goes from this catch basin to the retention pond at Hunterston. You'll see this catch basin is designed with 4 windows. So all 4, the window you see there with the basketball in it, that's supposed to flow freely, but the other 3 sides of that are also supposed to be open so water can get into them. You can see that all 3 of the other sides has vegetation going in them, are blocked and are not freely flowing, letting the water in the storm system come in. So that's what's really going on here. The storm system is not maintained, it's backed up and clogged up, and it backs up water. And so we're happy to go out and evaluate the situation. I am going to make a proposal in that we think it's best that they correct the situation. And you'll see in my last slide, MI Homes is willing to, because we're going to be discharging into it, we think it's important for them to fix their system. If they go to fix it, MI Homes will be willing to contribute $10,000 to the fix, well, 50% of whatever the cost is, up to $10,000. And we don't think it'll cost anywhere near $20,000 to fix this. I mean, you're talking about adjusting grades in the creek and getting rid of the silt and so forth so the water can flow freely. So that would be our contribution to the solution if they want to take it on. Next slide. Again, the additional beef that Mr. Flam since last meeting asked for additional tree cover. I think we planted 12 or 14 additional trees in there, so there's no holes. So it's fully vegetated along that common property line as you come in our entrance. The red line represents the decorative 4-board Kentucky horseboard fence we've agreed to put in as well. Next slide. Again, a comparison between really the situation the Flams will have under our PUD zoning versus the straight zoning. Straight zoning is on the right-hand side. They would have homes stacked up against their common property line, and the closest house would be about 153 feet from the Flams' house. Under our plan, none of our houses share a common property line with the Flams' property line, so they have a lot of green space behind them. They have the additional buffering, which wouldn't be required under straight zoning. Additionally, the houses are further away. Our closest house is 230 feet away, and the next closest is 167 feet away from their house. So we think the PUD provides a better situation for them, and that it allows for green space behind the house and more distance from the new houses. Next slide, please. And further, the Flams back in 2006, prior to them building their house, I guess they bought their lot. They did facilitate and execute a sewer agreement that runs next to the creek, which that sewer easement serves the Abbeytown subdivision, or the Abbeytown subdivision. Thereby, they basically facilitated a future subdivision, so they clearly knew that homes were going to be built there. So it's really no surprise. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, and we're trying to do it as carefully as we can for their situation. Next slide. Here's another thing we've agreed to do. You'll notice this perimeter fence, and it's tough to see, but if you look where Paul Ayers is, there's a red dashed line that starts right next to the Flam property. So again, the decorative fence runs through next to the Flam's property, stops at the sewer easement, and then on the other side of the creek, we're talking about picking up this style fence, running along the Paul Ayers property up to Kevin Gerst's corner. And Kevin Gerst's the one that contacted me about this and had talked to his neighbors Smith and Sweet, and they also want this style of fence. I have not heard from Paul Ayer, but the fence would be on our property, maintained by our HOA. But again, Kevin and his 2 neighbors to the right wanted this style fence. We've agreed to put that in, so follow that dash line, if you can see that, all the way up to the corner of Gerst's property, and then it'll come straight across the Smith property and straight across the Sweet property and dead end into our east property line there. So that's something we've agreed to do and pledged to do at their request. Next slide, please. So Mr. Pitcher and his attorneys here tonight, I think their real concern is they really don't want housing, so they're going to pick on Mike's report and anything they can because they just don't want housing. But I thought it was fair to at least you guys know what is the real impact. Not building houses is not an option. I mean, the existing property owner does have property rights. The United States Constitution provides for that. Those rights are greater than your neighbor's ability to be able to view your property. So it's not about not building houses, but again, want to show you what is the true impact of Mr. Pitcher. And you'll see his existing house there, lovely house on the hill. All the tree cover between him and the valley, between him and that 380-foot dimension is to our property line there behind his house. And there's another 25 or 30 feet to the house, so you're talking about over 400 feet. So you're really talking about a football field and a third out the back. And then down in the lower area there, you'll see that first white line. Mike, you can point to that. The white line coming from the house, lower screen. Yep, going left. That's your 380 dimension, 400 feet to the house. And then coming the other way, his view shed across the church schools property to hit that is 450 feet. So now you're talking about a football field and a half before he sees a house. And again, note the vegetated cover from his house to our first house on the upper screen there. Next. So here's a section of that, and you'll see Mr. Pitcher's house on the right-hand side, and then you'll see Abbeytown, our house, which is quite a bit lower topographically from where his house sits, and that's that rectangular box you see where it says Abbeytown. The green, and that's that tree-covered valley from his house, which is on his property, to our property line, which is currently agriculture plowed at our property line there. And you'll see the diangular sight line, that's from his second floor window, in his perspective staring at our houses, kind of over. And then at his first floor level, staring through some of the existing cover, and then really that straight most horizontal view shed really is shooting over our houses. So that's engineer did a section of really what his view lines look like. Moving on to the traffic study. Traffic was a big concern last time. So since then, we commissioned a traffic engineer. He did a full report. That report was submitted to the Hamilton County Engineer's Office, Eric Beck's office. It was reviewed, and you'll see the finding there that the developer has conducted a traffic impact study prepared by a qualified traffic engineer, and the traffic impact study has been approved by this office. So they reviewed site distance, speed, our point of access, all these things that traffic engineers look at. And again, traffic study has been approved with no concerns from the Hamilton County Engineer's Office. So in summary, you asked me to address, what do we address for our neighbors' concerns by bullet point? We've shown you the decorative fence and a significant tree buffering along the air flam property on the left-hand side as you approach our entrance. The perimeter field fence along the Air, Girth, Smith, and Sweet property, we've agreed to install that. The stormwater management plans ultimately will be approved by the county engineer, but as you've seen, they've already preliminarily approved them and show that they'll work with their standards. Here's our offer. If the flam, and we haven't presented this to them, it's here tonight, if the flams, airs, and the moats, the people adjacent to that storm system that's not working, choose to improve their stormwater system, MI will contribute 50% of the cost, not to exceed $10,000 towards the improvements. So that's our outreach to help them with their situation. And then, of course, the off-street sidewalk waiver and MI's contribution to Colerain Township Sidewalk Fund in an amount of $75,750 to complete the connectivity to Hunterston and Pippin Road. So again, that's a check we're writing to the township. We estimate those improvements to Hunterston to Abbeytown, and then from Abbeytown Fire Station to Pippin to be roughly $41,000, leaving roughly $34,000 to further the sidewalk to Pippin and Kemper and additional sidewalk improvements around there, which I think Mike can speak to. I believe the township's got a plan to do that. So, and then finally, the Kemper Road traffic study has been approved, and those concerns have been eliminated. So we think that those are the big concerns we've addressed, Mr. Chairman, since last time. And we still think what you see here is still a great plan. and be great housing for the township and a great community. We appreciate your support.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Austin. And commissioners, questions for our applicant? Comments?
I got a question. If the residents don't agree with the stormwater proposal that you have, what effect does it have on Abbeytown?
Well, again, that's their storm system, so it's their obligation to fix it. Our recommendation is they do, and we're going to contribute to it. But really, if it's not functioning, it's really the county that should be enforcing that to be fixed. We have not engaged the county to get involved, but again, it's their obligation.
But what effect will it have on your project?
Our water flow will still be the same as it is today, if not better. In other words, we'll be trying to oversize our intentions to reduce the amount of water, but we're going to build our project according to Hamilton County engineering standards. And so if this subject comes up, I think the county would step in and tell them they have to fix it. We're getting ahead of that by volunteering to help them fix it. But right now, their storm system is not in compliance with Hamilton County Engineer's Office. So they have a problem whether we build Abbeytown or not.
But I still don't understand what effect it would have on your project if they didn't comply with what you requested.
It wouldn't negatively affect our project. Our project can still be built according to the standards and function just fine. The problem is that they have a storm system that's not functioning the way it's designed.
Okay.
So our project actually is going to help them in that we're going to be able to hold back more water than currently is happening, and we're going to make a monetary contribution for them to go fix their own problem and get in compliance with Hamilton County stormwater regulations. So our project's helping in those two very ways.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments? Mr. Austin, if I read the traffic study correctly, it does not call for any road improvements on Kemper Road nor any installation of traffic signals. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so no turn lanes one way or the other on Kemper itself?
No, sir.
Okay.
And that is in the package, and the technical traffic study has been submitted in full.
Okay. One final request for questions or comments. Thank you, Mr. Austin.
Thank you for your consideration.
We will need a motion now to move into public hearing. If I could have such a motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
And a second, please. Okay, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Motion to open the public hearing. Commissioner Faring,
Yes.
Commissioner Grody,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. Iona, do we have a sheet of speakers?
I will get that sheet right for you, and
And is there some way, Mr. Iona, the heat could be turned down?
I asked about that. Unfortunately, there's no way to turn that down.
All you engineers out there can't figure out how to turn the heat down.
Open the window.
Because I'm a lawyer and I can't do math.
Okay. Mr. Iona, is there a list out there that we can access? If you'll have one moment, please, sir. Okay. We have moved and seconded to approve the opening of the public hearing. Sir, you're our first presenter. If you, first of all, could be sworn in by our legal counsel.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, so help me God.
Okay, sir, if you could please state your name and your address, and would you be so kind as to spell your last name?
I'm Rich McVeigh, RICHMCVAY. I've written my address down on the sheet. You can see that. Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening, sir.
It's my understanding that this is the second time this development has come before the zoning committee. And based upon resident input, some changes have been made. We've talked about them tonight. Essentially the traffic study and the issues around water drainage. This evening, I'm requesting you amend this application that's before you, and I'll tell you why. Residents have consistently stated that sidewalks, gathering places, and connections are very important. In the recent Imagine Colerain survey, 40% of the residents' comments, the top vote getter by a large margin, were for sidewalks, safe pedestrian paths, connectors, and outdoor activities. 16% of the comments were related to cleaning up commercial areas. 16% wanted more economic development. 12% wanted the rumpy odors to be eliminated. 9% were directed at preserving rural areas, and 8% of the comments were directed at traffic improvements. It's clear people want to get outside, gather, and feel safe in doing so. That's what residents are telling us. The PDR plan will allow the developer to exceed the density standard by about 30%, which in turn allows them to construct and sell about 15 more homes on this track. Now, increased density can make sense when in the total balance of issues for the developer, the residents, and the township, all interests are being served. I think a better plan would include and encompass these statements. If you go to the staff's recommendations, approval of section J, if you can pull that up, the first item I want to talk about is item D. And I say that all three of the staff's specific recommendations should be required. Specifically, the common open spaces will be developed or treated, which includes keeping it natural and maintained, provision of a playground, provision of paved walking trails, and provision of planning and landscaping. They ought to do all of it. Item H, that a waiver for the sidewalk connection be denied and that a fully functioning sidewalk be constructed north of West Kemper Road and south of the development. I've seen what's been proposed. It's meandering back to the development. We're going to have people coming up West Kemper, going into it. And furthermore, it looks to me like it's spending extra dollars. These are requirements that residents have repeatedly stated were important. Importantly, these are things that M&I Homes has done in other developments here in Ohio, across the country. I base this conclusion after traveling to M&I Homes sites in Blue Ash, Green Township, Liberty Township, and by reviewing a number of M&I developments across the country, all of which are displayed on the M&I website. Now here are some pictures I'll give you. I got two packages I'll give to you, and you can split them.
Thank you.
The first three images you'll see are what M&I has done in other developments around playgrounds, community areas, gathering places, okay? This is not something that's new to them. They know how to do it. They have the wherewithal to do it. And this is what residents are saying they need. The other two slides that you'll see are developments. One of them is in Blue Ash. It's the Daventry Estates, okay? It's high density, okay? And what you'll see there is these guys know how to construct retaining walls. They've got a retaining wall in front of that on one end of it's probably 10 feet tall, and on the other end is about 5 feet tall. Another development is over in Green Township. It's the Greenshire Commons. Okay, you have a picture of that. They have a retaining wall in front of that that's probably 40 feet tall. Okay, so they have the wherewithal how to construct retaining walls, okay, and hold them in place and let people through. I think the applicant has already agreed that a sidewalk doesn't need to go up next to the road. It can go down off the road. It could go back close to the back of the houses, and they could put in a retaining wall should they choose to do it. They have done that, okay, in other locations. So although they would prefer not to do it, I think residents who live in the development and those who are going to be walking up West Kemper would prefer to walk along the road. They don't have to walk at the top. They can walk at the bottom and then up. So my recommendation to you is that you ask them to put in the sidewalk. And if that's prohibitive, then they need to tell us that. It's important that our township establish the correct standards and precedent before moving forward with higher density housing. This is what this is. While higher density housing does improve the profit margin for developers, our township residents also need to be receiving long-term benefits that help to make them proud of living in Colerain. This is a larger issue than simple economic development. Let me tell you why. To put this in perspective, if this is a $23 or $24 million investment, maybe more, plus or minus, the township will receive in new money each year about $12,000. And the reason that is that when you vote on tax increases, you vote on a certain amount of money. So when somebody comes in and puts in a $24 million investment, it doesn't affect the taxes that you and I pay on our house. And the township gets no more money. What the township gets is 1.4 mils of money on the new investment. So in this case, that's about $12,000 a year. Now, I don't know how many miles of road there are in this township, in this subdivision, half a mile maybe. In 20 years, it'll cost the township, based on history, $500,000 to fix that, okay? And you have coming into the township tills to fund that, just for road work, the additional road work, about $12,000 a year. Now let's talk about the school system, okay? The school system and your tax bases are the same. When you vote on a school levy, you vote on a specific amount of money. But the school system gets 4.3 mils of inside millage. That means that they'll get about $30,000 a year, 35, 40 maybe, of new money coming into their system. Now, it costs the township, the taxpayers, about $5,000 a year to put someone in the Northwest School District, okay? The rest of the money, the $4,000, comes from the state and the feds. So essentially, with $30,000 a year of new money, or $40,000 a year of new money, this township, this development will only pay the costs for about 6 to 8 kids. Now, I don't know what the developer says on how many families will be in there and how many kids, but there'll be more than 6 to 8. So what I want you to understand is that this is not an economic development in the sense of producing more cash. It won't. The expenses will go up and they won't be covered. Now, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, because it will help. You know, the total township evaluation is like $1.2 billion. And you put this thing in there and it might reduce the tax base on the rest of us by 0.06%. So it's not like it's incremental. But I want you to understand that this is not, the reason to do this is not because it's a driving economic development interest. Now, I'm not opposed to economic development, okay? And I'm not opposed to high-density housing. But I think what this development needs are more amenities that that the residents can take advantage of. And that's why I'm saying, you know, go ahead and give them what the residents have said they want. And that is more outdoor activity and natural space. And require the applicant to do all three things that are in item D. And then as item H, I just say to them, bite the bullet, put the sidewalk in along Kemper, put it down near the houses if you need to. You'll put it in a place where it's the most economical place for you to put it. But to run a sidewalk, to dump people from West Kemper into the subdivision, to the back of the subdivision, behind the firehouse, down to Kemper, it's a cost issue. And it's not what's in the best interest of our township in the long run. Do you have any questions of me?
Apparently not. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your input, and we do take this into serious consideration, so we appreciate your coming out this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. TP is next. Or is that you, sir?
It is
Tom Tepe, I'm attorney for MI Homes.
Okay.
I'm here to answer any questions from a legal perspective, or I would like to reserve the potential to rebut any arguments that counsel for an adjacent property owner may raise.
Okay, so you weren't really planning to present right now?
Not at this time,
Okay.
sir. Just I'd like to reserve
All right.
time for rebuttal if
Okay.
necessary.
Mr. Hunter? Sir, if you'd come up to the podium, please. And before stating your name and so forth, our legal counsel will swear you in, sir.
Can you place your right hand, please? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
If you'd state your name, your address, and for the courtesy of the minutes, could you please spell your last name?
My name's Calvin Hunter, and I reside at 3220 West Kemper Road on the corner of the Hunterston Subdivision. Thank you.
How
First
do you
of all-
spell your last name, please?
Oh, my last name, Hunter, Hunter.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. Several areas of concern that the neighbors in Hunterston, as well as the neighbors in the long drives that go back. The number one thing is the sewer system. The Metropolitan Sewer District is sent a letter that says, essentially, I quote, "Sewer system service is available via connection to the existing public sewer via a mainline extension of the public sewers in West Kemper Road, subject to the following requirements and conditions." And they go on and list those conditions. The sewer system there, they call it a public sewer system, but it is actually just a lift station that takes all the sewage from the Hunterston development up diagonally northeast to Pippin Road, to John Gray Road, actually. And then that water natural drainage goes toward the Mill Creek Mill Creek sewage system, wherever those are. In reality, there is no MSD plant west of Pippin Road. So if we have, the watershed naturally goes down Kemper, joins Lick in the Bank Creek, and goes into Butler County and to the Great Miami River. If there were to be a failure or overflow of that pumping station, there would be the sewage pollution of those waterways all the way down to the Great Miami River. So that's one of our concerns, that pumping station was not built anticipating another 68 homes in a high-density development. Second item of concern is in the zoning staff report, section F. The comprehensive plan describes the area as Beavis Pleasant Run character area. This is an error in description, I believe. Rural Kemper Road is not physically near Beavis. Really, it's best described as Pleasant Run Dunlap character area. In Colerain Township, Kemper Road stretches from Hamilton Avenue to Dunlap, ending on the old Colerain by Fire Station 102. There's a giant Rumpke Mountain between rural Kemper Road and Beavis. And as I recall growing up, I grew up in the area, and Beavis was actually kind of Struble Road to Northgate Mall. There was a Beavis Airport there at Springdale and Colerain. So I think the characterizing it as a Beavis/Pleasant Run is an error in classification, if you will. But anyway, I would suggest that township that the township description for R4 states in part, for the protection of older existing neighborhoods. In this area, west of Pippin to Dunlap, definitely is an existing older rural area. I invite every zoning committee member and the Colerain Township administrative people to actually drive from Dunlap east on Kemper Road to the new fire station 109 near Pippin Road. You will not see any high-density developments, only substantial homes with lots of space, forests, fields, and farmland. This is the character of rural Kemper Road, Dunlap area. Pull into the fire station at 109, and that's near Pippin, and pull into the fire station and look at the Abbeytown site in person. You will see an amphitheater-like area with steep sides and converging streams toward the private residential homes to the west. Also note the severe grade on both sides of Kemper where the proposed sidewalk solution is being given to you. There's high grade on both sides just past the firehouse, and on the right side is the water tower and the cemetery. So to take a look at that, it's a lot more meaningful to see it in person than to look at it on a flat map. You'll get the picture. From Fire Station 109, looking parking lot, looking north along Pippin, you will see what has been classified as R6, residential housing types at a moderate density by description. You will actually see large homes on large lots, natural open space, churches, a cemetery to the south, and of course you're standing at Fire Station 109. The acreage of the adjacent residences around the proposed development to the east and to the west that's directly adjacent to the proposed property, are from 1.65 acres to 8.6 acres. 5-acre residences to the north, 10 to 15 acre homes to the south across Kemper. These families chose Colerain Township to invest in and build their homes in rural Kemper Road, Dunlap area to enjoy nature and tranquility, not to be staring at houses that are 10 feet apart and not in the character of the existing community. While you're taking the tour of rural Kemper, take a turn into Hunterston and look at the spacing of the homes in the Hunterston subdivision. This whole area is definitely a mature, older area with the newest homes being built around 1998 to 2001 in Hunterston. Originally, Dries proposed 285 homes on approximately 95 acres with a PD development plan. The neighborhood residents protested the R6 PD at township meetings and the protest and to protect their rural farming community from overrun by high density housing. The township, the neighbors, and Dries finally agreed to keep within the R4 PD zoning that is currently existing, and came up with a plan to put 185 homes instead of 285 homes in the Hunterston development. And if you take the tour through Hunterston, you'll see the spacing, 20, 25 feet between homes. You'll see lots of land, and as a result, Hunterston has a minimum of 0.3 acres up to 1.2 acres per lot, with an average of 0.45 acres or 19,602 square feet on the lots as an average, and a nice lake and walking paths with wooded areas. The lot sizes were taken, the acreage was taken from the Hamilton County Auditor's online property access. Comparing the Hunterston subdivision to the proposed 7,800 to 1,800 square foot average lots, are averaging out at Abbeytown at around 10,318 square feet. If you take their added open space, where they've included that in a calculation for you know, like, okay, here's the added green space or open space, as they called it. If you add that to their average square footage of the lot, you come up with 15,743 feet total density. The average in Hunterston, taking in our homeowners association managed community green space, which is about 6.85 acres, divided by the 185 homes, you get a total square foot density of 21,215 square feet per lot as an average, compared with the 15,000 with their green space included. You know, that's not really the square footage of the lot size, as it's stated in the, it is correctly stated, for each lot would be 7,800 to 18,000 square feet in the proposed development. So, I also did an aerial map survey. This is just a fun fact of backyard in-ground swimming pools within, there are 20 in-ground swimming pools within a 1 mile radius of the proposed project. I don't think there'll be any in Abbeytown due to the size of the lot and the short backyards, et cetera. Just a note, the history of Hunterston originally was owned and farmed by my grandfather, Celadon Sargent Hunter, and then my dad, Herbert Hook Hunter. I was raised on this farm and am residing there now. So I know the community and its character. Farmers needed each other back in the day to assist in harvesting and sometimes stepping in when one person was incapacitated. The Salonica Reserve / Abbeytown property is an amphitheater-shaped property that my granddad and father and I have assisted in some farming operations. And I know the hills have a number of underground springs that feed the creeks listed as swales on the proposed map, running together toward the proposed 2 retention ponds and then the several adjacent homes in the property where we saw the flooding and some solutions that were presented tonight. This past Sunday, February 28th, 2021, the whole creek overflowed again, flooding the private home drives to their 4 houses north of the creek and the yards of 2 more homes south toward Kemper. My rain gauge showed 1.3 inches of rain between Saturday PM through Monday morning, 2 inches officially at Cincinnati Airport. The flooding continued west into Hunterston, affecting the backyards of 4 homes behind my house. Could I have the slides? Okay. Is that the first one? It should be.
Your pictures came over as just individual pictures, not in a slide deck or anything. So I grabbed as many as I could and created a slide deck for you to present.
Okay.
I tried to get as many as I could.
Okay. This is just looking at the bottom left corner is the lanes that go back to the 2 houses that are on the hill. And from the orientation, I can't really give you the names of the homes or who lives in which house there, but let's go to the next slide or the next picture. They should be labeled 01, 02, 03.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
There you go. Find it.
Hold on a second. I'm having a couple issues with the slideshow here. I'm gonna have to re-add those. For the record, I got the flash drive before the meeting. I'm trying to accommodate a member of the public here so that we can get these pictures shown.
Mr. Hunter, in light of the number of other people who wish to speak yet this evening, could you summarize or wrap up what your concerns are so we can move on, please?
Okay. The pictures were of the current Sunday's flooding that we had, and it really just shows just like a lake almost. I know we've heard some proposals to how we're going to help and remedy the problem. The fact that the Hunterston, where the Hunterston intake is, that goes underground to the lake, the Hunterston lake is adequate to handle most of the water, but because of the with a little bit of rain, we can see what the flooding was from. Yeah, here we go. Here's another picture. This is looking east, and if you can just jump through those
Okay,
real quick.
certainly.
That's looking east toward the proposed development.
I'm not sure why it will not allow me to go to the next slide with the pictures on it.
Okay. Well, okay, we'll let that go. The flooding is a natural occurrence and is somewhat anticipated in the spring. However, this is before construction on Abbeytown development, taking away 25 to 30% of the soil absorbing capacity with streets, roofs, sidewalks in the actual proposed area where they can be, homes can be constructed. Trees and landscape buffers really will do nothing to retard the natural runoff from the existing proposed green space areas. Those are already there, and we're talking about like developing the bottom of the arena style landscape, and most of that will be taken up with streets, roofs, and sidewalks, et cetera. So, as stated quite plainly in the last public hearing with the zoning, Colerain Township zoning, and MI Homes basically stated the flooding is an existing condition and it's not their problem. Not today, but taking away the surface acreage of the proposed development and the additional water burden from this development will only worsen the downstream flood problems. After the fact, the developer will say, that's not their problem, it's the county or the township. The retention lake at Hunterston is fed by the streams from the proposed development. It has catfish and other fish species in it. The construction silt and machinery runoff from the bulldozing and construction disturbance of most of the soil in the amphitheater area development will add sediment and affect the ecosystem of the Hunterston Lake. The two proposed retention ponds appear to be wet ponds according to the plans of approximately 10 feet deep at the center. A wet retention pond is kind of like a glass of water. It always has water in it, and you pour water into it, it just runs over. And the same with the Hunterston Lake. It's got an inlet and an outlet, and it's a lake. So adding additional burden of water, et cetera, to the proposed retention ponds is just going to overflow and worsen the flooding in the adjacent properties to the west. In conclusion, the housing density of Abbeytown as proposed is not within the character of rural Kemper Road Dunlap community. Additional flooding is a major concern that cannot be remedied after development has begun. Safety issues with traffic and sidewalk solutions have not been addressed adequately to ensure the safety of residents and children walking to school. The residents of rural West Kemper have committed their resources and faith in Colerain Township to maintain the level of quality and character of this community and do not want to lower the zoning standards. Thank you very much.
So I was able to get the 6 pictures up
Oh, okay.
that you had.
Okay, you can just kind of
go
run
through them.
'em. That's looking east, I think that's Paul Ayers' house there. This is a north view of the two houses up on the hill. And you can see the water flooding across the road. This one is another north view. Just kind of an east view of the water in the backyard of, I think, Ron Moat's, the big house, we call it. Next, if you got
That's
it.
the 6 that I was
Okay,
able to
that's
get
it.
on there. I'm
Okay.
sorry I couldn't get
All
it.
right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Hunter? I have one, Mr. Hunter. Early on in your presentation, you referenced the concern about the sewer system.
Yes.
Do you have anything in print that shows us what the capacity of that system is and that it,
I asked for it last time from the same people that signed the letter, and I did not get a response.
okay, so you're not 100% sure that it's at capacity, under capacity, over capacity, or anything?
I am sure that there is nothing downstream of that pumping station or that lift station.
Okay, thank you
So-
very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Iona, I think it's Lanham. Looks like Justin Lanham. Sir, if I may ask, is your name on my list also?
It is, sir. Callan, C-A-L-L-A-N.
Okay, so I'm just going to check you off unless you were planning to speak.
I was, I do have a presentation.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, okay.
Mr. Lanham is not going to speak. Who's next on the list?
Okay, Mr. Callan is right here, I think. He's next on the list. So, sir, if you'd raise your right hand and be sworn in by our attorney, please.
My microphone is off. As counselor, we don't need to swear him in.
No need?
No need. He can go.
Okay. If you'd state your name and your address, and could you please spell your last name, please?
Yes, thank you. My name is Sean Callan, C-A-L-L-A-N. The address is 225 West Court Street. As you see from the cover slide, I'm an attorney at Manley Burke. And I'm going to rely on Mr. Iona to advance slides for me, so this may be a bit choppy, but we'll get through it. If you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. I'm here tonight on behalf of my clients, Ken and Becky Pitcher. They live over at 12009 Pippin Road. Where Mr. Iona is pointing there, I've indicated where their property lies. As you could probably see from Mr. Austin's slide, they do have a nice house. It sits up on top of the hill. The trees you saw in that photograph were actually the remnants of an old apple orchard. There's a long driveway going down to Pippin Road. It's a beautiful location, sits on 8 acres. It also abuts the subdivision, and so they have some concerns, and they asked me to come over here tonight and talk to the commissioners about those concerns. So we could hit the next slide. As you've heard, we've been here before. It was about 1 year ago today. I was in front of this commission. My clients were here that night as well. And we voiced objections to this plan at that time. And if you could advance the slide, I've got a slide about how this commission felt about this proposal then. 1 year ago, or approximately a year ago, this commission found that Abbeytown subdivision would be detrimental to adjacent properties. There's nothing that's been presented here aside from an agreement to perhaps chip into some sewer work that would change that determination. The site plan is the same, by the way. There's no changes in the site plan other than the addition of a little bit of landscaping. Other than that, this application is exactly the same as it was a year ago. The commissioners also found that the Abbeytown subdivision would be in conflict with the current zoning, land use plan, and comprehensive plan. Again, none of these concerns have anything to do with utilities or traffic or drainage or any of that. This is straight up planning. This is comprehensive plan problems. The identified reasons for the conflict with the comprehensive plan are the density of homes, the open spaces, and the feasibility of the proposed sidewalk. Again, none of those things have changed since 1 year ago. The density is exactly the same. The open spaces are exactly the same. And we have heard that it's not feasible to do a proposed sidewalk. In fact, the developer's trying to escape that obligation. So the reasons that this commission recommended denial of this plan a year ago remain today in the plan before you. If you go to the next slide. I'm here to advance some legal concerns, and you can just run through that. I think there's 4 of them. I'd like to talk a little bit about planning and the comprehensive plan. Again, we talked about this last year, but since it's here again, I do want to run through it quickly. I want to talk about the sidewalk and the school situation. I do want to address the intensity of the site within the context of the Hamron County subdivision regulations. Given the citation to the Salonica plan and this idea of straight-up zoning, I want to investigate what that would really allow. And then finally talk about some approval criteria. And again, staff talked about these, but I think it's important to really focus on the deviations from the underlying zoning district that you're being requested to approve here. These are significant deviations from the standards. And we go to the next slide for me. First and foremost, comprehensive plan. This is, the most important thing we'll talk about. Colerain Township adopted comprehensive planning in 2005. When this comprehensive plan was adopted, Colerain Township made a significant investment of time, energy, money, people into adopting this plan. A lot of work went into it, a lot of time and energy and money went into it. Next slide, please. And it's good because Ohio statutes require that if you're a township and you adopt local zoning, you must zone in accordance with a comprehensive plan. So we have the plan, and we need to look at it to find out what we're permitted to do. And this is, by the way, a rezoning. This is changing the zoning map from R4, predominantly R4, a little R6, but R4 to a planned development. So it's an actual zone change. So it needs to be done in accordance with the plan. The next slide. You can just go through these two. So the plan tells us a lot of things. One of the things it tells us is that we should, when considering new developments, try to maximize roadway connections. Now, what does that mean? Well, on page 17, the plan tells us that means we should minimize cul-de-sacs. On page 20, talking about suburban neighborhoods, which this is, it tells us that the use of cul-de-sacs should be minimized in new developments. Can we go to the next slide, please? And then we heard a lot about this area called Beavis Pleasant Run. This is a specific land use area where this location lies. And in this specific area, the plan tells us there should be no cul-de-sacs. All right? So that's what we have. And if we could go to the next slide, here's what the developer proposes. A site plan with 4 cul-de-sacs. Well, really 3 cul-de-sacs and a stub street, and that's a different issue. We'll talk about that. But, that is not minimizing cul-de-sacs. It's truly not. It's certainly more than 0 cul-de-sacs is what we're looking for in this land use area. And the practical reason that we're supposed to minimize cul-de-sacs is pretty obvious. I mean, that presents a situation where you have one way in, one way out. That makes it difficult on Colerain Township services, like fire and EMS and police and sanitation. And if you look at that stub street area, that's the most difficult area of all. You get a big truck in there, it will not be able to turn around, not easily anyway. At least with the cul-de-sacs, you get a little bit of turnaround, but on that stub street, there's nothing. You'll be backing in and out of there. So anyway, that's what the plan says about cul-de-sacs. In my view, this plan is completely inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. I mean, this shows many cul-de-sacs. So next slide. Okay, the comprehensive plan also tells us what to look for in terms of density. And this was one of the specific items that the commission cited to a year ago in recommending denial of this plan. And what the plan says, the comprehensive plan says, is that density for new development should be compatible with the density of existing development surrounding the area. So, okay, so I thought it would be fair to take a look at what that is, and I know staff has done that as well, but if you could go to the next slide. So here is the site. The site is right in the middle of this screen. I don't have a border around it, but you can see it. It's right in there. It's right in there. All around it, and we've been over this, but to the west, to the north, to the east, and to the south is all large lot rural development. Much as Mr. Hunter explained, this is West Kemper, rural Colerain Township. That's what this looks like. Large lot, rural development with some institutional uses like schools and churches and fire stations and a cemetery. That's all stuff that you would expect to see in a residential neighborhood. So, in my view, when you look at what MI is proposing here, and proposing a minimum lot size of 7,600 square feet when 14,000 square feet is required under the underlying district, that's not compatible with what's around it. It's not consistent with the existing development pattern around it. In fact, I'd say it's radically different than the existing development pattern there. You go to the next slide. Now, if you pull further back out, as MI has proposed, and you look at sort of the, I don't know, surrounding neighborhoods, not necessarily what's next to this location. So here you can see over to the east, we have the Kingsbridge subdivision, approved in 1970. And in there, our research showed that the minimum lot size was 8,500 square feet over there, which again, even though it was 1970, built in a different time for different needs, is still a larger minimum lot size than what MI Homes is suggesting here at 7,800. So worst case scenario, it's still over 7,800. As time goes on and you move west of Pippin Road, you see Spruce Way up there in the north, 1978 or so, 11,000 square feet up there, until you get to Hunterston, which is the most modern development out there, 1998. And in there, we're talking about 14,000 square foot minimum lot size, which, by the way, is exactly what's required in the R4 that exists in the subject site today. So what this shows is that over time, the trajectory of density has basically decreased. The average lot size has increased, the average density has decreased. And so again, even if you look at this on sort of a neighborhood view, what's being proposed here is a retrospective to the past. It goes back to Kingsbridge and before. I mean, you're talking about minimum lot sizes that are in no way consistent with contemporary development. And by the way, all of these developments predate planning. Comprehensive plan wasn't adopted until 2005. So when the planning professionals were looking at the Kingsbridge subdivision, they didn't have all that good planning work to look at, and now we do. And now we know that we're supposed to look at density requirements in the context of the existing development pattern, which again, large lot rural development. So in our view, this plan is completely inconsistent with the comprehensive plan from a density perspective. At least last year, it seemed like this commission, or at least some of the commissioners, agreed with that. And we'd ask you to continue to examine that question and come to a similar conclusion on that. Next slide. Open spaces. This is another area that the comprehensive plan gives us some direction about. So if you can just bring those in. So what the plan says about open spaces is that residents are really looking for something. Well, let me just read it. It's easiest just to read it. It's good language. Residents have demonstrated a frustration with developments that receive incentives, like a zoning change, for development in return for the preservation of open space when the open space is land that, because of development constraints, could not be developed for any use in the first place. And that's exactly what we have here. If you go to the next slide. So this is the Abbeytown site plan, and I've sort of cross-hatched in here in brown the open areas as proposed by MI Homes. And it's 8 acres or whatever it is, and it sounds like a lot, but if you can go to the next slide, we sort of put this against what's really there. And so this is an aerial photograph of this site. And I highlighted some of the key features of this site because they're really inescapable. If you look in the northwest corner, I've got some red dashed lines. I don't think anybody talked about this particular slope, but that is a slope. If you look at the slope from the northwest corner up there down to the bend in the creek as it exits to the west side of the development site, that's a 50-foot drop. So that's a significant slope. And then, of course, we've already talked about Kemper Road up there in the south side of the development, and that, again, is a steep slope. And then we've heard about the creeks in where they are, and this is where they are. We sort of mapped them out here in blue on this overhead. And if you go back to the previous slide, if you could, and we go back and look at what the open spaces really look like, it's it, right? It's the hillsides and it's the creeks. So if we go back one more slide and we'll look at again what the comprehensive plan tells us, these are open spaces that because of development constraints, being a hill and a creek, they couldn't be developed for any use in the first place. So MI is actually proposing to do exactly what the comprehensive plan tells us not to. Go forward. Comprehensive plan also talks to what kind of open spaces are preferred. And specifically says improved open spaces are a priority over the preservation of areas in the natural state. These could include walking or biking paths, playgrounds, or other uses that will create an amenity for nearby residents. Again, you know, there's talk in the staff report that, you know, they'll come back at final development plan and maybe have some of these kinds of improvements, maybe not. But the bottom line is you're not going to get real improvements out there. You can't put a playground in a creek, you know. And MI Homes is telling us they can't even put a sidewalk out there by Kemper. So how are you going to put a biking path or a walking path on any of these hillsides? Can't even put a sidewalk in, according to them. So I don't see any real promise of any kind of amenity at this site. We're going to be stuck with the natural habitat here. We go to the next slide. Sidewalks and schools kind of segues into that. We've been talking about this as well for a year. Down there in blue on the south side of the development is a sidewalk area. That's where you would expect to see a sidewalk in a development like this to ensure safe passage down Kemper Road. Again, we heard that's not happening here. The developer has put in for a waiver. I don't think it was part of the zoning packet, but there is a waiver. And the reason for the waiver is that the topography along Kemper Road is not suitable for a sidewalk. All right. Now, we heard some discussion about that topography. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not. But we also heard MI talking about the $75,000 check that they're going to write to Colerain Township. That's not some kind of gratuitous charity. That's a fee, all right? The township charges a fee if you apply for a waiver for a sidewalk. So that's not free money. That's the cost of doing business. If you want to not do a sidewalk, you got to pay the fee. If you go to the next slide. So this was an interesting quote, and this goes back, and you can hit the thing again, but so if you advance one more, there's a little text here. So this was a Colerain Township staff report, the very first staff report back when this came up last year, December 10th, 2019. At that time, staff said it is important to have sidewalks constructed on the West Kemper Road frontage of the property. And of course, that makes sense because you look at the site plan and you can tell you really need a sidewalk down there on Kemper Road. But you know, this wasn't our idea. This, you know, there wasn't some consultant that we hired. This is staff. And now all of a sudden, here we are a year later, and now it's fine to just, you know, pay the $75,000 and skip the sidewalk. If you go to the next slide. And this is what's proposed instead. This is MI's proposal for the west side of the I guess sidewalk improvement, if you want to call it that. What MI has proposed is that it would be good if Colerain went ahead and built a sidewalk down West Kemper Road off-site. You know, this isn't even on Abbeytown's property. This is off-site. So if Colerain Township will just do that, then we can hook it to the Abbeytown Drive sidewalk, and we can bring people up that way. If you go to the next slide. And then, you know, after those people make their way through the subdivision, and they happen upon Lot 17, they're going to know, you know, to take a right there and then go down behind the fire station and then down to Kemper because that's going to be easy to follow. None of that makes any sense, all right? That's not a solution. That's somebody looking at it saying, here's a theoretical way I could get a person from the west side of Abbeytown to the east side. Theoretically, yeah, that works. It's not realistic. It's not practical. And it doesn't solve the problem. People are still going to walk down Kemper Road because they're not going to know how to do this zigzag, jig-jog thing going back through everything. They're just not. So, you know, the problem exists. It's not fixed. And it's been a problem for more than a year now. So, go on to the next. Okay, one more on that one, if you could. Yeah, so I want to address this real quick about this straight zoning idea because This was a plan that was presented at the Board of Trustees hearing last year on this site plan. Didn't come up in front of the commissioners last year, but it did at the Board of Trustees. And it kind of goes to this idea of Salonica and straight zoning and what this site could look like. So what MI basically said at the Board of Trustees meeting last year is, trustees, you either approve Abbeytown as we submitted it, or we're going to go out and do something like this because we've already laid it out and we know we can do it. And I think we could all agree, looking at that, that's not an ideal layout. But, quite frankly, I don't think MI thinks it's a great layout either. I don't think they'd do it because they probably couldn't sell that. But whatever, that was the threat that was made. If you could go to the next slide. I wanted to look specifically at Hamron County subdivision regulations because that didn't look right to me. And so there's a provision dealing with streets that I think has some bearing on this, and just go to the next slide. 12.3.10, basically this is the bottom line rule in Hamilton County, is that if you have a subdivision with cul-de-sacs having a single public access, which is what MI is proposing here in their straight zoning, or a series of cul-de-sacs, or any other combination of dead-end streets, you can't get access to more than 30 lots. All right, so them coming in and saying we're going to go to get 68 lots, it's just not consistent with what the regulations say. If you hit the next, a little bit more text here. There is a procedure by which you can seek a modification of that. You got to satisfy 15 factors, none of which are really important here, except for the recommendation of the adopted township plan. And here we know, because we just went through this exercise, right? We just looked at the comprehensive plan and how the comprehensive plan thinks about cul-de-sacs. It's not favored. So the adopted township plan does not support this kind of development. So go to the next slide. Now, there is a possibility of providing additional lots if you show stub streets, right? So if you have one access point and one stub street, you can get up to 60 lots. If you have one access point and two stub streets, you can get up to 90 lots, which is why MI is showing stub streets on all of these developments. It's not because they actually have a plan to connect later to Pippin Road. It's because they want to be able to juice their lots under the subdivision regulations. But if you go to the next slide, the regulations address this idea of just throwing fake stub streets into a plan by saying, if you want to count those stub streets, and if you want the enhanced ability to put in more lots, you have to show that that stub street is feasible and practical. Feasible and practical. That's what the developer would have to show. And if you look at the next slide for me, please. This again is that threatened MI plan. Came up at the Board of Trustees. If you look at the northernmost stub street going there out the east side of the development, theoretically, I guess, to go into Pippin, that's Ken Pitcher's yard. He's not going to give them access over his property to get out to Pippin. That's not feasible or practical. And then if you look at the stub street down there in the middle there, yeah, that's going out over church property. And MI has no plans to acquire that. They haven't got a contract on that piece. They got no discussions with the church about that. As a matter of fact, my client talked to the church, and his understanding is the church is going to develop that for church purposes. So again, that's not feasible or practical. This is pie in the sky made up, right? So I don't think that they're going to be able to get their lots juiced up by showing these kinds of stub streets. If you go to the next slide. The reality is, and there's like 3 points here, they're going to be limited to 30 lots under the subdivision rules, most likely. The MI threat, as shown there, is not going to get approved. And the bottom line is they could never get the 68 lots that they're seeking today without approval from this township. And go to the next slide, please. Okay, and then the approval criteria, that's just keep going. There's a few of these that could be an issue. I'm focusing on the first one. Is the preliminary development plan consistent with the adopted Colerain Township land use plan? I think we've shown conclusively that it's not. And again, the commission, as of a year ago, seemed to agree with that. If you could go to the next slide. It's not consistent as to density. Again, we're talking about a 7,800 square foot lot size that's akin to an R6 urban residential district. So you're going to take an urban residential use and you're going to stick it in the middle of rural large lot zoning. It's completely out of character for the area. It's not compatible with the development that has occurred in the area. Again, all of which is a large lot. If you go to the next slide. Just keep hitting the thing. Yeah, again, we talked about this at length too, but it's not consistent as to cul-de-sacs. The plan tells us to minimize cul-de-sacs. The Beavis Pleasant Run land use plan tells us no cul-de-sacs, and we got a plan with 4 cul-de-sacs or 3 cul-de-sacs and a stub street. You know, again, in case they have to go to Hamron County, presumably. Not consistent as to open spaces. These open spaces are hills and streams. Couldn't be developed in any other way. Couldn't, you know, and again, that's another thing about the straight zoning plan. All those plans show development on that hillside, development out by Kemper, and development over the top of streams. I don't know how any of that's going to happen as a matter of reality. It doesn't seem very likely. It would cost an astronomical amount of money to do the improvements you need to do to build in hills and streams and everything else that's on that site. So it's not really going to happen, but we're talking about open spaces. So it's also not good open space, you know. And again, MI is telling us down there by Kemper Road in that hill area, you know, that's so hilly we can't build a sidewalk. But I tell you what, it would be great open space. I mean, how is that consistent with a comprehensive plan? It's not. It's not usable space. Never was usable. Can't be developed. It's inconsistent. Next. Whoop. Can you go back one? Sorry. And then this is just, again, hitting that sidewalk. I think the sidewalk solution is inadequate. I won't spend any more time on that. I just don't think it works. Okay, now you can just flip through these. There's about 6 or 5, I think. These are the deviations that are being requested by virtue of all those variances that Mr. Iona went through with you. But I think it's important to consider them again, because we're looking here at a pretty dramatic change in the character of this area. All right, we're talking about a 44% lot size reduction for a minimum lot size of 7,800 feet, from 14,000 to 7,800. Got a 26% lot size reduction for your average lot size. What's being sought here is actually 19% more units than old Mr. Salonica wanted. You know, he only wanted 57 units in here, and MI's in here seeking 68. Substandard lot width, substandard front yard setback, substandard side yard setback. Approval, again, with no plan for getting kids to school. Approval with no plan for a sidewalk on Kemper. No plan for usable open space. No plan for common amenities. And approval with 4 cul-de-sacs. And really, in short, what we're basically saying here, and if you could go to the next slide for me. And again, you know, the commission agreed. If you go back, sorry. You know, the commission agreed with this again last year. And on a plan that hasn't changed since last year. That the plan is just inconsistent with the Colerain Township Comprehensive Plan. And no matter how many trees and decorative fences and, you know, sewer deals you offer to neighbors, you can't change the fact that the density is too dense and the open spaces don't work and they're inconsistent with the plan. Those are facts. And it means that the entire plan is inconsistent with a comprehensive plan. Here we go to the next slide. So we're going to respectfully request that the commissioners, again, recommend denial of this plan. It's the same plan you reviewed last year. It suffers from the same setbacks that it did last year. And I would like to end by just saying, you know, these development standards, these performance standards that MI is asking for relief from, including lot size and all these things, these aren't meant to get in the way of development. These are meant to protect the homeowners who have already invested in Colerain Township and have lived there. And have invested money and built homes based on the understanding of what their zoning would allow. And it's a rural area, and that was a reasonable expectation. I think, you know, contrary to what Mr. Austin said about my client, if you ask my client what he thinks about development, he would say, fine, do it in accordance with the rules that were here, because that's what I anticipated. This is not what he anticipated. This kind of, you know, small lot urban development in the middle of what's basically the country out in Colerain Township. So. Thank you for your attention. I really appreciate it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Callan. Commissioners, any questions?
Nope.
You've given us a
thank
lot
you.
to think about. Okay, the next person is Scott Huber. Okay. Kevin Girth. Okay, sir, before you state your name and so forth, could you raise your right hand and be sworn in by our legal counsel, please?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Sir, if you would state your name and your address, please, and for the benefit of the record, would you spell your last name, please, so we have it clear?
My name's Kevin Girth. I live at 3140 West Kemper Road. My last name is Gerth.
Thank you, sir. The floor is yours.
All right. I came here tonight not really to shut anybody down or, try to run anybody through the mud or anything like that. I'm just a neighbor that's trying to get a little clarification, share some opinions, hopefully give some good positive feedback on some of the ideas that I see. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the green space, open space. I don't know if it would be easier if Mr. Iona would show a picture of the development plan, but I live up in the northwesternmost corner. There is going to be a green open space that borders my property. I've been trying to get information from Brad, have conversations about the open space and the development of that open space, and I think it's kind of a little bit of a gray area as far as what I'm getting, not really getting real positive, direct answers, just more kind of like, yeah, I think this is what we're looking for. If you look at the picture, all that green open space at the top left corner, what I just wanted to get clarity for today was that green space remain and preserved as a natural buffer. That's kind of what MI's kind of been telling me, but I haven't seen anything as far as in the development plan what that large green space will actually end up being. There's a lot of mature trees that follow a creek that run right behind where the properties on that edge would be, that go back up to the north end, to that panhandle up there. I'd like to see that stay as is for that natural buffer, and I do think that would agree with your comprehensive plan. The second thing I just wanted to bring up was the sidewalks. I think everybody, has a little bit of some input on the sidewalks. My big thing with the sidewalks, mostly the one that goes from the Hunterston subdivision to the Abbeytown subdivision, that sidewalk does cut across my property and my driveway that I use for an entryway to get it back to my home. So my questions and concerns that I'm seeing here tonight is there's really no reason, in my opinion, to add more foot traffic to a 50-mile-per-hour road. And what would really be the reasoning for adding a reason to add that foot traffic along a 50-mile-per-hour road when back in 2019, as far as the board and the trustees, came together and said sidewalks and people walking along a 50-mile-per-hour road was kind of a concern, Nobody wants to see anybody get hit. Nobody wants to have an accident. And, heaven forbid I was part of that. If I'm pulling in my driveway trying to come off a 50-mile-per-hour road, I'm looking to get off the road. I'm not looking to find a family walking across my driveway, and then all of a sudden we got a problem. I don't know where at in Colerain Township, or if anybody here can tell me where at in Colerain Township, we got a sidewalk that's going from one neighborhood to another neighborhood on a 50-mile-per-hour road, crossing driveways. And you got to understand, it's just not me coming home, it's my neighbors, it's my family. There's neighbors that have trailers. And everybody that lives in that section there, we all know how bad it is for, you're expecting cars that are following you to be paying attention, looking at the turn signals. I slow down as much as I can with my turn signal on, and I still get passed up by the cars that don't want to slow down. They just get over in the opposite lane, they want to pass over. So if I'm coming home, I'm pulling my camper, another trailer trying to come off a 50-mile-per-hour road, and I can't get all the way off the road, and somebody's barreling down on me, they're going to have a decision if they're anticipating on going around me, or if they're going to try to hit the brakes and I can't get something completely off the road because somebody's in the way, or even a worst case scenario, I'm coming home at night. There's not a single traffic light, or not traffic light, but a light on that road. It's a dark road, pitch black. You're driving down the road. As soon as you pass over Pippin Road, heading west on Kemper Road, it's a black road. Past the fire station, I think that's the last set of lights you see. And as you're coming down the road, it's dark. You can't see anybody walking down a sidewalk, especially if they're crossing my driveway. I don't want to hit nobody. I don't want to kill nobody. I don't want to see anybody have a problem, because we put a sidewalk in to connect two neighborhoods. That doesn't make sense to me. As far as the sidewalk coming out further up the road, I think, everybody knows that getting kids to school, that's important, right? They're going to walk to school. They got to get there some way. If their parents, can't take them, whatever, all I see is they're kind of just putting them out on a different section of a busy road. They're not making them walk that whole stretch, but they're still putting them out on the road. I think there could be a little bit more that could be done, as far as considering the lives of people. You can't put a $75,000 check on a life. You can't, say woulda, coulda, shoulda. You put a development in, it is what it is. And then the future will tell the rest of the signs of, what's to come, who's going to fix the problem after that. You get people getting hit, you have, a lawsuit maybe here or there, You can't put a price on a life. We got to make sure it's safe. Do it right. That's what I want. That's what I want to see is a good, safe scenario. So that's all I got. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Girth. Commissioners, before you leave, sir, Mr. Girth, before you leave, give the commissioners an opportunity to ask questions if they have any.
I do have one question. You live right next to this proposed development, right?
Correct.
And the sidewalk runs from your driveway down to the other development, the existing sidewalk.
Yeah, there's an existing sidewalk on Hunterston.
How many people do you think walk that sidewalk in a day? I'm just curious.
That sidewalk in front of Hunterston, I don't see people up there on that sidewalk. I see them on the back side of the pond.
Okay. That's all I got.
Any other questions? Again, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Ken Pitcher. Good evening, sir. If you would raise your right hand so our legal counsel can swear you in, please.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
If you would state your name and your address, and for the sake of the record, could you spell your last name, please?
My name is Ken Pitcher. My address is 12009 Pippin Road, and my last name is spelled Pitcher.
Okay. Thank you, sir. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just want to, my attorney's already spoke and neighbors have spoken. I'm not going to belabor some of the points, but I do want to just talk from my end as a personal homeowner. my wife and I built our property in Colerain Township there in about 2006. And so we made a substantial investment in Colerain Township. I grew up on Crest Road, which is not but a mile or so as the crow flies from where this property was. There was an apple orchard growing up. I had friends that worked in the apple orchard. So all of this property has been something I've been accustomed to through the years. It's in essence been codified through the comprehensive plan to be retaining its character that it's had. And I'm really afraid that this high density plan detracts from that. And I feel very strongly that it detracts from that. I guess there was some conversation it's very difficult to hear out in that rotunda. It has a bit of an echo, and if you're not talking directly into this microphone all the time, it's sometimes very difficult to pick up. But I know Brad Austin was saying some things that my wife told me, I think he's saying you're against development. Well, that's not true at all. As a matter of fact, last year, I stood before all of you in November, and I stood before our trustees in January and said just the opposite. I am okay with development. I am okay if MI comes in there and develops nice houses. I'm only asking that it be done in accordance with the comprehensive plan, which has been well thought out. It's survived the test of time. It's been there since 2006. So a lot of people really thought this thing through, and they decided that this is a good way to do things. And as my attorney made several points that we had talked about, but one of them is the Kings Bridge, which was built in 1970. That was 8,500. And you've seen with the passage of time, it's gotten just progressively greater square footage to where it's now the 14,000 square foot we've seen with Hunterston. And so that's all I want to do is maintain it in Hunterston. I think that's a very nice subdivision. I walk through there periodically because I go park down there and walk in the subdivision because you don't want to walk down Kemper Road. I've done it once or twice, and it's like, that's too scary. They're going 50 miles an hour at a minimum most of the time. But nonetheless, I just wanted to make sure that it was understood that I didn't have any opposition about them coming in and building under existing regulations. And there's precedent for it. You all five of you set the precedent last year and said, no, this should not be approved as a rezoning change. And the trustees did the same by a 3-0 vote. So, and then previously, years ago, as Calvin Hunter mentioned, it had already been stopped when Dries wanted to make 290-something homes, and instead they made 180-something homes. So it was maintained at the 14,000 square foot. That's all I'm asking for. I'm just asking for you to maintain the character of our area. Our area is a thimble when you look at the size of Colerain Township, and to take and go away from that, I just think that's a real travesty that would be perpetuated upon our existing citizens who have made our commitments and made our investments in our community, expecting that those standards would be upheld. And so that's where I'm really at with a lot of things. I did want to just mention something to you. You made the comment, do sidewalks exist from the side of the east side of the fire station down to the corner of Kemper and Pippin? They do not.
Okay.
There are none.
Okay.
And then what was the other one? There was another one. I don't remember. I thought there was just some point of clarification, but that's okay. So I'm only asking you to not approve this for all of the reasons my attorney said, which I think we've talked about it at length, and it does not appear to be at all consistent with the comprehensive plan. And as just a concerned citizen, somebody who's made a substantial investment in our community, longtime resident, my family's here. You know, we got business property in Colerain Township. We got residential property in Colerain Township. I am not, again, I'm a CPA by training. And so I'm not, I'm a businessman. So I'm okay with business, but I'm okay with business being conducted in accordance with the rules that somebody thought was important to put together years ago. I do have one thing I want to mention to you. The land use guidelines in the comprehensive plan for the Beavis Pleasant Run area, Area 3, page 35. They say the density of any new residential use should reflect the development of similar uses within the character area. I know my attorney touched upon that. I just wanted to reiterate it. On page 16 of the report, or of the comprehensive plan, it says Colerain is blessed with extensive areas of rural or semi-rural land. While active farming is becoming increasingly rare, the preservation of the rural character of the township is important as a balance to the urbanizing areas. Rural character contributes to a peaceful quality of life. I believe that's true. I believe it's very true. And we've had nothing but great success and happiness since we built our house in Colerain Township. I just hope it can continue. I'm okay with houses being there. Just build in accordance with the existing regs. And if they come up looking like Hunterston in terms of the spacing, doesn't have to look exactly like Hunterston, but in the spacing, the 14,000 square foot, have at it, MI. Build it. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Okay.
You
Thank you,
wanna-
Mr. Pitcher.
Sure. Were there any questions?
Commissioners, any questions? Thank you, sir.
Yes. You're welcome.
Last speaker is Mr. Don Smith. Come forward, sir, to the podium. And if you'll remove your mask and raise your right hand so you can be sworn in by legal counsel.
Sir, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
If you'd state your name and your address, please, and then spell your last name so we have it correct for the record.
Don Smith. Address is 12080 Birch Hill Drive, and SMITH is my last name.
Okay.
For orientation for the commissioners, if you remember the panhandle in the diagram, I'm on the left side of the panhandle. My neighbor to the right is Jeff Sweet, and then Kevin Girth, who you just heard, is a little further over to the left.
Okay.
I know that the comments have centered on, as you mentioned, traffic, access, drainage, and utility issues. There's one issue that I wanted to expound a little bit more on, and that was the drainage issue. I addressed it last time to the board, and I wanted to reiterate it one more time. I think it's important, and in the perspective I want to bring, I don't think we've talked about it yet. I do have a diagram or a handout, if I could provide them to the board. I don't know if they've seen the old ones. Okay, great. Thank you.
We'll share. We'll share.
So as you get this, it consists of 3 pages. The first is just some basic water calculations. I'll refer to that later. The second page comes from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA's website, with peak events that we've seen, just to give a gauge for some official amounts of rain that have come down. And in just for everyone's general information, over in the east side of Ohio in Cambridge, they had a 30-minute episode that had 7 inches of rain recorded. And then we've had some as many as a foot of rain in an hour, that's just to the west of us. So we're in a zone that can have unusually heavy rain events, and that's the whole purpose of this. And then the important part would be the last page. I'm holding up what I've drawn here, and you can see that there's some outlining some areas. What I wanted to concentrate on, do you have a slide that shows kind of a bigger area that you can zoom out a little bit, perhaps? I think I remembered the vicinity map slide at the very beginning.
bit further, please. I'd say that's about the greatest. That the biggest you have?
Yeah, that would be the greatest extent that we have.
Oh, okay. From this map, and if you look at the last page that I've provided to you, the area that I'm trying to highlight is the topographical or geographical crest, where you see the blue outlined Salonica Reserve proposed Abbeytown, where the word church is right there toward the top of it, and then coming over toward Kemper Road on your right, or excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm not oriented, here we go. North is on the right side here. No, I'm sorry, Pippin. So from the church all the way, let me orient myself here, sorry. There we go. Okay, from the north side where it says church right there, if you go down the east side over to where the water tower is, you can see right at the very bottom under Kemper Road, if you make sort of a semicircle down to that, on the right, other side, clockwise. Yes, a little further, yeah, right about in there, all the way down. That's the geographical collection area of where rain would drain down into the proposed Abbeytown area. And then on the other side, you can see from where the pond is in the upper left, come down a little bit from it, and then if you went down into the corner here, you'd see that's one area of collection. It's not just the Abbeytown, but there's a lot of water collection all around it. That's where any rain falling would drain down toward the lower left of the Abbeytown. What the part I want to bring up that hasn't been discussed yet is just to the left of it in the Hunterston subdivision, they have, if you look at the handout I showed to you, the area that's outlined over on the left side of it in a little different color, that's also a collection area that drains water down to the bottom of where their collection pond is too. And that hasn't been mentioned yet. So you're going to have an equal amount of water that is being collected coming down from not only from this slide here, but the adjacent equivalent size property, or even just a little bit bigger on the left of it. And all of that's coming down to the vicinity of the Hunterston Pond and then the downstream runoff. The point I wanted to make on that is, if you'll go to the first page, I looked at just the topographical plans for the Abbeytown and just put together some assumptions. And my question was, what happens if I get 6 inches of rain, a half a foot of rain in an afternoon? And the assumptions are the ground's saturated, so it's not going to soak in, so I can get some runoff, and I can try to quantify how much runoff I have. And then what I've done is I've looked at that, at how big the area is, and based upon the lot size, streets, number of driveways, all the water that's collected and run in it and brought together into some sort of water runoff. And I've given you 3 scenarios. 3/4 of the water comes down, or excuse me, 3/4 of the area is covered, 2/3, and then a little over half. And so it gives you a representative there of square footage. And then what I did is I looked at how much water would 6 inches cover. And I tried to give you something that would be appropriate. And if you think of a football field, everybody has in their mind to think a football field, 300 feet long and about 160 feet wide, that based upon the amount of area that is constructed, meaning roofs with gutters, driveways, streets, everything that collects water, you could have anywhere between about 7 and 10 feet of water, depending upon what type of a rain event you had. And this is just ballpark figures based upon what I can determine. Now, in the presentation that just occurred, I looked at and estimated from some of the mapping and the scales that were on there for the 2 drainage ponds, about 150 feet long, 100 feet wide, and about 10 feet deep. And it basically, that's 150,000 cubic feet of water, which is about 20% of the water if you had 6 inches of rain, that would be about 20% of the water that would run off in an afternoon. So you would need, I don't know, maybe 5, 4, somewhere in that vicinity, that number of ponds of that size, completely empty to hold an estimated half a foot of water that would come off And if those ponds are already full, then the water, as mentioned before, water in, water out. You're going to get no relief or buffer by any of those ponds that are going to do that. And then all of that dumps down into the Hunterston collection, plus all of the water they have above them. So there's a huge water problem here that hasn't been addressed correctly. I understand that it's an opportunity to put in a economically viable project, but what we're doing here, I think, is we're trying to cram so much into a small space and hope that we don't have one of these events. As I was sitting out there, I was thinking, it's sort of like the captain of the Titanic saying, well, let's hope we don't hit an iceberg as we go by, and let's see if we can get the speed record. So it's a viable project if everything aligns correctly. But the minute that we have an event unusual, the fire coverage was mentioned, we have the schools and the other issues, but we get a water event in here, and I don't think you get so much flooding in Abbeytown just because it's at the top of the drainage, but everything downstream is going to get hit with all the water that's collected, not only in Abbeytown, but in Hunterston too. And that's what I fear, is there's no adequate plan to be able to address that kind of event. Hopefully it never happens, but if it does happen, then it's going to be a really ugly mess for a lot of people and for the county. So that was the only other point that I saw that I thought I should address to the board. I think it's important that the considerations for proper water drainage, the rate you can get it out, and hopefully that there won't be any flooding around the ponds or around some of the drainage areas, and then further on downstream all the way down through the drainage channels to the Miami. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Before you leave, commissioners, any questions for Mr. Smith? Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Iona, that completes the list. Do you know of, to your knowledge, anybody else?
I think the representation for the applicant.
Okay, Mr. Tepe?
Thank you very much. I know the hour is late. I will not take
Hold on,
up my...
Mr. Tepe. Does he need to be sworn in?
He does not.
Okay.
My name is Tom Tepe. I'm with the law firm of Keating, Muthing, and Kleekamp. My last name is spelled T-E-P-E. 1 East 4th Street, Cincinnati, 45202. I know the time is late, so I'll be quick with my time and direct. You've heard a lot of things. This meeting could have been significantly shorter if people presented you with information that was something that you could base a decision on. Stormwater is nothing that you can base a decision on. The township has no jurisdiction whatsoever over stormwater issues. It's the sole purview of Hamilton County. Same with the road. Sole purview of Hamilton County. You know, we heard about lots of things. You know, Mr. Cowan is a fine lawyer. He went through a presentation, and like what a lot of lawyers do, they try to throw a bunch of stuff because they're hired guns. You know, all the way down to the very last word, which is that great big red denial. That's always a trick that people like to use. But let me just kind of boil it down into a couple of different things for you. He broke it down. Planning. This property is zoned for single-family use. Yes, they're asking for a zone change, but they're not asking for a new use. They're just trying to make what is already allowed better. And if you need to take into consideration your PUD regulations, they are to promote flexible design. Flexible design. There are some parts of properties that can't be developed. They just can't. What do you do with them, right? And you can't deprive the property owner of his right to develop property. So there has to be a way to be flexible. You have variances at the Board of Zoning Appeals, and you have a PUD process when it comes to legislative rezoning. You heard a lot of discussion regarding the comp plan. The comp plan's 16 years old. And by law, they're required to be updated much more frequently than once every 16 years. So you heard in the presentation from Mr. Cowan, went through a lot of this area, quoted partial sections of this, you know, the ever-present ellipse that doesn't tell the rest of the sentence, and those other things. But one thing you didn't hear, except from your own person, is expert testimony. He's a hired gun, I'm a hired gun, so take our words for what they're worth. He is paid for and works for the township. He is paid to look out for the township's best interest. He's the only expert in the room. He did a staff report, very thorough, and he concluded that it does meet the comp plan. And he concluded that staff's recommendation, your staff, not MI's, not Mr. Pitcher's or anybody else's, your staff concluded, based on a thorough analysis that took us roughly 45 minutes, that they recommend approval. Why? Because that's what they do for a living. They're pros. They study this stuff, right? Is there any one particular scenario that's absolutely perfect, that meets every single letter of every single thing in a zoning code? I can tell you there's not a chance ever that happens, ever. You know, you talk about the comp plans. We talked about, you know, the sidewalks. Well, you heard from Mr. Girth, who lives right there. He says, you got to be crazy. We don't want them over there. That's a 50-mile-an-hour zone. Even Mr. Pitcher said, you don't want to walk on Kemper. No way. There's a reason why the legislative authority of the township trustees, adopted the sidewalk program, right? There's a reason, because not every single piece of property is suitable, geographically or otherwise, for a sidewalk. This is a 40-foot drop. You tell me. I mean, let's not throw logic out the door. We've heard a whole lot of stuff, but we're all fairly common sense people. We've got a good head on our shoulders. Is that the right place for a sidewalk? And you're right. It is part of the program, and the fee is a formula, correct? But, you know, they're going to pay into that, and there's a reason why. The township says there are certain circumstances that justify the use of the sidewalk fund. And finally, you know, we could go on and on about all sorts of things. They call this the rural character of the area. I don't particularly see it a rural character of the area. There's a reason why your comprehensive plan breaks things down into area, not just specific properties, you know, very close by. This property abuts, as was testified to by somebody else, institutional uses, schools, churches, fire departments. You know, they say, well, you know, you would expect to see a church in a residential neighbor. Tell you what, I've been employed by many people who have tried to oppose churches in residential neighborhoods, so I don't know where that statement comes from. I also don't know where the statement comes from that says, look at that cul-de-sac, you'll never get a fire truck down there. Presumably, your fire department reviewed this application. My experience tells me when they have an issue and they think that there's something that's unsafe, they're going to speak up. We didn't hear that, did we? They're just trying to throw stuff at the wall to say, look, the sky is falling Chicken Little. This is a good development, right? You have the property that's just to the left over there. The gentleman talked about his farm and everything else, and he helped farm this and everything. It was okay when his subdivision was put in, when it was a farm, then became a subdivision. Now it's a problem here? I don't know. We ask that you use common sense. Look at the merits of the plan. It's been revised since the last time it was before you. The water issue, it is a non-issue for you to consider. But be that as it is, they've proposed and spent their own time and money saying, it's not our problem. It's their pipe that backs up. We will try to help make it better, but we can't solve their problem. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your consideration. This is a good project. They're not asking for a new use. They're just asking for a way to make the already permitted use better and more conducive to the geography of the property.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Teepee? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That I think now that concludes the list of public address. So we need a motion to close the public hearing, please.
I'll make the motion.
A second, please.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. Could we have a roll call, please?
Motion to close the public hearing. Commissioner Fairing? Yes. Commissioner Grody?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We come to the point now, commissioners, where it's time for us to consider, to deliberate, to ask additional questions of Mr. Iona or perhaps Mr. Austin or perhaps Mr. Callan, since he's still here in the room. Do we have any additional questions, comments, et cetera, for any of these people present?
Yes. So for myself, I just want to say I do appreciate the effort that MI Homes has gone through, specifically in regards to the traffic study. I know for myself, 14, 15 months ago when you were here, I personally was not happy with knowing the traffic situation there. So you proving me wrong was, I appreciate that. I like facts, so that was helpful. Also, your validation of what we were saying, that a sidewalk along West Kemper Road in that stretch is dangerous. Me personally, if it's not feasible to reduce the speed limit, which we all know it's not, endangering lives on a sidewalk that Mr. Faring's question was very valid. How many people use that sidewalk currently that's there? So why take a chance of endangering someone if they do choose to walk along that roadway? I do also recognize the information regarding the adjacent property owners and the issues that they have with their drainage system. In my opinion, you can't expect someone else to maintain their property and issues if you aren't doing it for yourself as well. So I do hope that the residents take advantage of the offer to improve the system and help alleviate part of those issues. It may not be a perfect scenario. We can't control Mother Nature, although we wish we could. I am asking that there is some type of amenities added to the plan. I do agree with the other side of the aisle that our comprehensive plan has language in it that demonstrates that the open spaces should have amenities and items that the residents of the area can use and enjoy, but steep hills and thick brush, in my opinion, don't meet that requirement. There does need to be something, and I don't know with what's left over in those green spaces if it could be a playground, which I don't think from everything that we've heard and read would be feasible as well. Maybe some walking trails, not sidewalks. I don't think sidewalks are feasible, but even if it's clearing pathways and utilizing a mulch bedding or something along that to get people moving within the neighborhood. The neighborhood that I currently live in Colerain, we're fighting 50 years later to try to get some of these added into the neighborhood, and it is almost impossible after the fact. But before the fact, we have a chance to control that now, and I hope that that is taken into a high consideration with this plan. But again, I do appreciate the points on both sides. The density is still out of this world. The plan for the housing did not change. It's still the small lot sizes and still close together. And when we think of 10 feet, that's pretty close to just adding a couple feet onto this table. I couldn't imagine how close that is. But that's basically my points, is I do appreciate the information we were given today. We do need to do better on the amenities of the open space. Mr. McVeigh made a great point about if we can't do the sidewalk along Pippin, perhaps doing it on the backside of those first properties. However, those properties already have a reduced backyard as it is. So I would hate to cut into their flat space and take away for a sidewalk that potentially really isn't used by anyone. So, Mr. Chairman, those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. McMullen. Other commissioners, comments, questions? Mr. Wilson?
It seems to me that part of what is at issue here is whether the plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And it's a judgment that it is or it isn't. And I just wonder, Mr. Iona, if you could just elaborate a little bit, perhaps, if it's appropriate for me to ask that, just on your judgment that it is consistent with the plan, given that the points that have been made, given the density and things of that sort, that it is consistent with the plan.
Certainly, I'd be happy to. As it pertains to the question about the comp plan, Commissioner Wilson, the comp plan is a book that provides guiding language for the entire township. And the current comp plan breaks that down into specific character areas located throughout the township. And each of those areas is based on a very specific boundary. But the nature of a comp plan, even though it does get specific, is to provide guiding language. Not quite the exact recipe for development, but the guiding language for what a development is supposed to look like in a certain area. Otherwise, you would just say, this little area here is going to be this, and this little area here will be this. There's no way to plan a 60 square mile community down to, the every little block. So we have a comprehensive plan that identifies guiding principles and concepts. And I think, as Mr. Tepe even said, it is hard to find a development that will meet every letter of the comprehensive plan. And in some ways, it does conflict itself. In some places, it says, we want to get in no case shall there be no cul-de-sac. And then in some places, it says, get cul-de-sacs or, try to get as much connectivity as you can within reason. You certainly don't want to stub street into, really large lots in this case. It maybe is not desirable. But going back to the comp plan again, it's not the cookbook, which is what the zoning ordinance is. That's very specific ingredients. The comp plan is more of that guiding language to evaluate these types of decisions. And when we take a look at developments like this, we don't just take a look at, this specific small square, this site, and then, what's immediately around it. We look at generally what's in the surrounding area. And that's what we did here. And here you do have, quite a diversity of development with which to take all that language in the plan and say, okay, well, what meets and what doesn't? What's the intent of the plan here? You've got a pretty high density residential development, right across Pippin Road. You've got a diversity of uses immediately adjacent to this property. So what is ultimately appropriate here? Well, in the end, what we found out that we really, liked about the plan is that it preserves open space. It works with the existing topography. It also, one of the big things that is coming out of our current comprehensive plan is fiscal responsibility with how we develop. Smaller lot widths equal less road maintenance in the long term. And that's something that we called out in the plan, or in the staff report. And that's something that's attractive to us. So, for a number of reasons, we found that this plan really overall met that overall intent and purpose of the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Other comments, questions? Mr. Callen, I have one question for you. In one of the slides that you showed about the cul-de-sacs, and it said that there was a limit of 30 lots if a cul-de-sac is involved, is that per cul-de-sac, or if there's, is that 30 per cul-de-sac, or if there's one cul-de-sac in the development, it's 30? If there's two, does that mean it's 60?
No, so it's not based on, so if you have one access point, like this development off of Kemper Road, and you have one cul-de-sac or two cul-de-sacs or three however many cul-de-sacs you have, it's still 30 lots with
Okay,
one access.
that's what I wanted you to clarify. Thank you. Mr. Austin, a question for you. In your study with MI Homes, what is the home buyer looking for with this particular development? Will the size of the lot be a detriment, or is it somebody who wants a smaller lot because they don't want to do a lot of lot maintenance and so forth? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so we're seeing that the exact same lot is our preferred lot in many communities, and we're seeing that people don't want the large lots, and that's the trade-off for having open space. So that's where Mike was going is, we are providing almost 30% green space here. So we do see it as a pattern.
Okay.
We're building on these same lot side in Liberty Township and Mason and other areas, so
Okay.
Fairfield Township now. So it's quite
Okay.
common for us, and customers responding to it.
Okay. And again, if you would clarify for me, on the sidewalk coming off the Stubb Street, MI Homes would install it to what, the corner of that lot 17? And then the township would have to pick it up from there and take it up to the fire station area?
Yes, that's a proposal. So once it goes off-site, that's obviously not our property, but in lieu of that, we're writing this check, and that's the idea, to provide the connectivity, and that's the $75,000, which will
Okay.
go a long way.
Okay. So if that is approved, then, Mr. Iona, then that part of the sidewalk would become the responsibility of the township to maintain?
Sidewalk is the responsibility of the property owner. So wherever that switch would be. So lot 17 would have two sidewalks, I guess, unless that's something that was worked out with the HOA documents. And then the fire department sidewalk would be Colerain Township.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to clarify. Okay.
Can I provide a point of clarification on the past question regarding 30 lots on a cul-de-sac or on a street?
Yes.
That is not under your code or the PUD. That is if this plan were to go through Hamilton County
Right.
Regional Planning,
Right.
but not a condition for
Right.
this plan or considered.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
And I think Mike did a nice job regarding the comp plan, which is guidance, but we're following a PUD process, which should be the leading decision-making, and that tells us to preserve natural areas and tells us to work with the topography. So it's a little more strict in terms of guidance and direction. So,
Okay. Commissioners, one more request. Any additional questions or comments for this group?
Yes, I just have a follow-up question on the 75,000 sidewalk fee. This conversation just prompted. Is that based off of the proposed sidewalk coming from 17 up to Kemper, or are we talking
So,
the stretch on Kemper? What
So
is
the-
being used to calculate that?
right, so the fee in lieu program that the township has is you're required to put sidewalk per the township resolution. If an applicant or a development does not want to pay that, they can pay a fee in lieu. It must be approved by the Board of Trustees, and the fee is currently 75 feet per linear foot of frontage along that development. So if you look at the slide here, you're showing, that fee is calculated from this point to this point along Kemper Road.
Okay, that's what I was hoping your answer was. That seems like the greater length.
And then that money, the money that the township receives from that program is used to construct sidewalk in other areas of the township. For example, we used it most recently to leverage a grant along, I think it was another portion of Pippin Road, over by like the Lake Gloria site. And then there was another portion along Colerain Avenue, in fact, down in Groesbeck, I think that we used some of that money to leverage a grant to construct sidewalk.
Thank you.
Did I hear correctly, Mr. Iona, in somebody's presentation, the sidewalk once it gets to the firehouse, but from the firehouse to the intersection of Pippin and Kemper. Is that like on the planning phase for the township to do that, or did I mishear that?
We don't have that in the planning phase, and I don't know all the specifics of what what the sidewalk arrangement is. I would imagine if we were to get the money fee in lieu, there's so many families at the Hunterston that currently aren't connected. While they don't use the sidewalk along Kemper Road, there's no connection. The goal would be if you have sidewalk here and then you have a connection through this development that comes back up, the goal would be to get it to Pippin Road where there is an elementary school.
Right.
And right now, so that would be the ultimate goal, is to get it there.
Okay. Okay. Commissioners, one last question of any other questions or comments. Mr. Wilson.
If I could, so the staff has recommended some options for trails or playground or something of the sort with open green space. I was just wondering if MI could speak to the feasibility of that, given the doubts raised about the topography of those areas.
Yeah, so I think if you look at that clause, it speaks to amenities, speaks to playgrounds, speaks to natural areas. It doesn't say do all those. And what the PUD tells us to do is be flexible and use the land and the opportunities we have. And that's what we've tried to do here. Preserve the natural areas, preserve the trees that are existing on the site, stay away from the creeks and the streams. And so it's not saying do every one of those. It's saying accomplish what you can given the site and make it the best you can. And I think we've done that here.
Sure, I guess my question is, do you believe any of those 4 options presented are feasible? The landscaping, the playgrounds, the trails, the walking paths, do you believe any of those are feasible, or are those not?
Again, I don't think, so walking trails, for instance, you've got a lot of natural area, but sidewalks generally are underutilized to begin with. And so people should walk out, in fact, meet people on the street. That's an okay thing. And so we haven't planned walking paths in here. In those natural areas, but people certainly can walk in those. So in other words, they don't have to be a defined path. People can walk their dogs along the stream back there, go up through the woods. That's all available. Sure. So we don't feel like it needs to be this rigid paved path everywhere. I mean, there can be these naturalized areas, let your dogs run, let the kids play back in the woods, so to speak. So we feel like that's what the site gives us more, a more natural experience. And that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, we have come to the point that I am asking if someone would make a motion, whatever it may be, in relation to this case of ZA 2021-01 Abbeytown Subdivision.
Make a motion that we deny it.
Okay, it's been moved to deny it. Deny it in its total presentation.
Yeah.
Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to deny the application for case ZA 2021-01 Abbeytown Subdivision. Before we call for the vote, any commissioners have any questions about the clarity of the motion before you? Mr. Wilson?
I just wonder if you could explain your rationale a little bit. Is that okay to ask?
Yeah, that was actually, in fact, was something I was going to ask. Is we typically write action letters following these, and we typically ask for findings.
My rationale is based on the many comments that I heard from the nearby residents.
That it doesn't meet the zoning and it doesn't meet the comp plan.
Want me to clarify that too?
No, that's fine. I just want to just make sure that we get it in. We should always put it on record.
Okay.
It's just very prudent to do.
That answer your question, Mr. Wilson?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Any others? May we have a
For
roll
me,
call? I'm sorry.
My reason for giving a second, first, I do believe that Mrs. Smith deserves a chance to have a vote on denial. We had such a strong denial of this the first round, and I appreciate her wanting to entertain and validate if we still stay consistent with that. I'm still not a fan of the density and the closeness of the houses, although I recognize that the applicant states that that is becoming the trend. But my main reason for supporting this is because I do think that for us to move forward, we need to make sure that we're validating what we did previously needs to be upheld.
Okay. Hearing no other comments, could we have a roll call, please?
Motion is to deny the project. A vote for yay is to deny the project. A vote for no is to reopen the floor. Commissioner Faring. Commissioner Grody.
Wait a minute. If, Mr. Faring, could you speak up? I could not hear you.
Yes.
Yes to deny it. Okay. Chair goes last.
Sorry. Okay. Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen.
No.
Commissioner Wilson.
No.
Commissioner Grody.
No. So the motion on the floor has not been approved. So that does not necessarily mean it is approved. We need to have another motion submitted by someone.
I will make a motion to approve zoning case ZA 2021-01 Abbeytown.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay. If I may clarify, Ms. McMullen, are you making this motion to approve as presented to us, or did you want to include in there anything additional about the amenities?
I would actually like to add another condition that we take a good and fair look at those open spaces, and although we say we want natural, there are things that we can do to make those conditions better, whether it be just removing any dead trees, brush, providing some type of bordering. I'm not speaking of fencing or anything like that, but I am a fan of having a more defined walking path or something that gives the feel of an amenity. So yes, I would like to add a condition for some type of amenity, and I do think that we can leave it open for cost and what is actually feasible, you know, once we take a deeper dive into that, but there needs to be something. So that's a very open-ended condition,
Okay.
I recognize.
So if I may clarify, are you suggesting that with approval of this, with your additional comments about amenities, you're wanting MI Homes to take another very serious look about what the amenities are and what can be done and what can't be done? Is that
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Wilson, you seconded the motion. Are you in agreement with that addition, or do you want to withdraw your second?
I'm in agreement with that.
You're in agreement with that. Commissioners, any additional questions or comments regarding the motion and the addition of the amenities, and Mr. Iona, have we clarified that for you to what that should be?
I think that's clarified enough. Yeah, I think we can amend D to, if it's approved, we would amend D to delete some of that stuff at the bottom 3 lines about, which includes one or more of the following, and then we just take that out, and then we add a new condition that says, that the applicant will create some type of community amenity to be presented at the final development plan.
And that would have to be approved through the final development plan?
Correct.
By the trustees?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioners,
The final
any?
development plan is through us.
Through you,
correct?
yes, I'm sorry, no, that is through the zoning commission,
Okay,
yes. So you'll get another look at it.
okay. Commissioners, any additional comments, questions? Mr. Wilson?
Just for clarity's sake, since I'm new, so we have approved this motion with all of the staff's conditions, correct?
If we vote in that,
Yes,
it's
yes.
everything that's been presented to us in print tonight, plus
Yes. Okay, thank you for that.
Ms. McMullen's additions. Okay, hearing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Oh, excuse me. Commissioner Faring,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
No?
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Grody.
Yes, the motion carries.
Motion passes 4-1.
So we are there. Thank you to everybody who did make presentations this evening. What you all presented was helpful in our deliberations. Okay. We look forward to what you bring to us next time. Okay, moving on. The next item is case ZA 2021-02, a commercial zone change regarding the Colerain Commons. And Mr. Iona, do you have a presentation?
I do. So the submitted application was authorized by Colerain Township Board of Trustees. The location, again, is an approximate 0.14 acre area located 235 feet north of the terminus of Clara Drive. And the submitted request is to rezone the site in question to planned development business. Again, as you all saw before, the preliminary development plan approval process is a 2-part process. We've got the plan development process is a 2-part process. The first part is the preliminary development plan, and the second part is the final development plan. We are currently at the zoning commission hearing of the preliminary development plan. In this situation, you all make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. If the application is approved at the Board of Trustee level, it comes back for a final development plan where you all are the final authority on the application. So here you can see the site in question. It's a very small site. It's located in on a portion of Grosbeck Park. And here you can see Clara Drive. Clara Drive is it's a road that parallels Colerain Avenue. This is the Colerain Crossing Shopping Center. Ronald Reagan pretty much runs parallel to the north part of this slide here, and then Colerain Avenue actually runs parallel to the the west side of the Colerain Crossings development. So it's a very built-up, developed commercial area to the east of the site in question, and then over here on the west side of the site in question, and then on the east side of the site in question is Grosbeck Park. That's a park. It's used for recreation and open space. It's a pretty large park. As far as Colerain Township parks go, it'd be a neighborhood scale park. Here you can see 3 of the ball diamonds. It has a large parking area here that's accessible off of Clara Drive. There's also a small parking area immediately south on the site in question. And then Clara Drive is used to access the rear of all the businesses on Colerain Avenue. For reference, this is the former Pet Boys site, and this is the that jump Gymnastics, if you're familiar with Jump Gymnastics. That's where this shopping center is. This is a cell tower site. And then the site in question is here. The objective is to parcel this piece of land off and then transfer it through a disposition process to the Colerain Crossings Commercial Development Center. And the proposal's being brought to you all in service of economic development. The corner tenant here on this site, it's been vacant for a very long time. And there's finally a tenant that's interested in moving into that site. The tenant's Caliber Collision. What they do is work on vehicles, you know, and what they want to do is retrofit a significant portion of this building to, you know, work on and service vehicles. And now they do body repair. However, one of the things that they are willing to do here is they're willing to fence off this entire area so that it would be screened from view of all surrounding areas. No cars being worked on. So if somebody brought in a car, and not every car they do is a car that needs a lot of body work, but some of them do have significant body work needs. But any vehicle would come down Clara Drive. They'd come in back here through a gated area, and then they'd be parked, you know, to the side and rear of the existing building. And again, they'd be screened through a fence, as well as significant landscaping to ensure that it's not visible from over here on Colerain Crossings, nor from Groesbeck Park or on Colerain Avenue or any area from the surrounding area. So that in a nutshell is really why this project's being pursued. And I'll go through some of the specifics about the site. So the site was originally developed in 1998. It was a Biggs, and then I think it became a Remke's at Biggs at some point. And then, you know, it went through a period of up and then down, and then there was a period of decline. In 2016-17, the strip center was, new life was breathed into the development. And recent construction includes that new commercial center that you see right there at the intersection of Ronald Reagan and Colerain Avenue when you get off Ronald Reagan. And then there's also planned unbuilt development that includes a larger office building over here, kind of capping off the development. It would be highly visible from Ronald Reagan. And one of the things we wanted to do, another part of why we wanted to pursue this was, you know, parking calculations and new tenant spaces. We wanted to ensure that we could preserve as much of the buildable area in that parking lot as we can for future development, especially development that's going to enhance the area and attract new employees and workforce and businesses to Colerain Township. So that does it for that. Here you can see is a picture of the existing shopping center. Again, here you can see that large vacant area. It's been vacant for quite some time. Looking back, you can see, you know, this is where that area where the vehicles would be parked. There'd be a large fence here, along with any accessory landscaping that would be required to, again, make sure that, you know, none of the vehicles awaiting body work or any other service would be visible. Coming back from Clara Avenue, or Clara Drive, this is a really interesting area. So this is the terminus of Clara Drive, and then as I was walking around the building from here, there's this like area over here that you can see that kind of goes back to a cell tower, and yeah, this is where the vehicles would come in, and then down here, there's is where the cell tower access road is, and this is you know, this is basically where the site is. This is where the site begins, like right here. And then it goes over to the, you know, almost parallel to the front of the building. And then it kind of goes over here. And the proposal would be that they would take the site, again, they would, you know, there's going to be significant earthwork that I think needs to happen there to kind of fill it in and bring it to grade. But they're going to construct a parking lot for about 20 vehicles there, and then they're going to screen it, green it, and do all those things so that you can't see it. But what's interesting about this site currently is that it really is, it's an attractive nuisance, meaning that oftentimes there are inhabitants in these areas doing nuisance behaviors, and then it's an attractive nuisance for illegal dumping. In fact, the first week that I started at the township, I came out here and we found a couple living room sets and a litany of things, and that hasn't changed since I did my site visit recently. So what this proposal would do is it would clear out all this honeysuckle here and all this forest growth. They would build that parking area, and then they would fence and then green and screen the development from view. Again, here you can see the site in question. The current zoning on the site is that multifamily. What we're looking to do here is to change the zoning to this adjacent PDB, so that it would be the same zoning. And then ultimately, once the zoning is changed, the township is currently involved in a dispension process to where the property would be dispensed to a property owner. And so the goal is ultimately to get it over here to Colerain, the owner of Colerain Crossing, so that they can, make the property a productive use and breathe new life into that tenant space. So, the comprehensive plan is, the site's currently located in the Colerain Avenue character area, and it doesn't really have a lot as it pertains to a 0.14 acre area located adjacent to a commercial center. But what I could find is that the pertinent information was that, number one, commercial development and parks and green space are appropriate land uses. So both of the things we have here are appropriate land uses. Number two, the township needs to look at creating methods of dealing with stormwater management through the use of green spaces, minimal lot coverage, and landscaping to avoid runoff. And then number three, the township needs to enhance the Colerain Avenue corridor through property maintenance. So again, here you can see an overall site plan for the development, the Colerain Crossings development. This is Colerain Avenue, and this is kind of Ronald Reagan here where you get on, go east. This is that new building that I spoke about earlier. It's that strip building that's located, really close to Colerain Avenue. This is the older mall that's been redeveloped, and then here is that proposed office building that hasn't been built. And then this is that, again, that tenant space here, and this would be where all the vehicles are parked. And here you can see the site in question. This is really, what the application's about, is these parking spaces. This is something that the tenant has asked for. They have a preset calculation of the amount of parking that they're gonna need based on a per square footage area of tenant space that they'll occupy. And they've indicated that they need this, or the deal just will not be viable. So, again, the request here is for a zone change to the PDB and approval of the preliminary development plan. I do want to talk a little bit about the variation that they're asking for the fencing. This is something that staff had brought up. We know that their fencing is going to be high quality. They want to do a really nice vinyl or better. But what's not for certain is the height that they're going to need. They haven't indicated that, what height would be appropriate. Maximum height in the zoning resolution is 8 feet. Staff felt it was appropriate to ask for that variation here so that they could have an appropriate fence to enclose the vehicles on the site. And then the second variation is that they are looking for a 0-foot landscape buffer where 40 is required. And this is something that if you go back and you look at the topography of the site, it's something that staff had discussed, and Colerain Township is interested in actually owning the landscape buffer. The applicant will plant that landscape buffer, as you'll see in the conditions, but it's something that, it's going to be in Groesbeck Park. We will be asking for landscaping above and beyond what is required here. And then as part of the conditions that you'll see, we also asked for additional clearing from the applicant. And the objective of the conditions that I'll line out later in the report is that, essentially that they go above and beyond to make sure that they really enhance this area, that they go above and beyond what's required. And then finally, at the very minimum, that they make sure that none of those vehicles will be visible from the surrounding areas. So moving forward here, based on this, staff is recommending approval of the zone change and preliminary development plan subject to the following conditions. And that is A, that sufficient fencing be provided to completely screen all vehicles located in the side and rear yard areas of the Colerain Crossing Shopping Center. Said fencing should be of high quality materials and shall not consist of chain link, barbed wire, or razor wire designs. B, that sufficient screening and landscaping be provided to completely screen all vehicles located in the side and rear areas of the Colerain crossings. Said landscaping should be in excess of what is required within the zoning resolution. C, that the applicant properly care for the planted landscaping until it fully matures. D, that the growth located in the surplus lot on the site until the terminus of the property line be cleared out. So again, there's a lot of vegetative underbrush located on that property line between the park and the Colerain crossings. People, it's an attractive nuisance for the homeless and unwanted behaviors. So we're asking that whole area, it's mostly honeysuckle, that it be cleared out all the way up to Ronald Reagan to mitigate those issues. Let's see. E, that additional landscaping be provided throughout the park as necessary to mitigate any issues associated with the proposed construction of the off-street parking area. And then staff is also recommending approval of those variations from the fence height so that they can have the ability to utilize the full height within the resolution to screen the vehicles, and then approval from the variation from the landscape buffer. And this basis is on the following. Staff finds that, with the fencing, there will be sufficient fencing to properly screen all the vehicles located in the side and rear yard areas. The fencing is going to be, the fencing is going to be of high quality. Staff finds that the plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which does state that commercial development is appropriate for the site. Staff also finds that the proposed density, character, and form of the proposal, as conditioned with the screening and greening requirements, is also generally consistent with the land uses in the surrounding area, which do consist of higher density commercial uses. The proposed zone change will allow for the construction of much needed parking and will be of service to economic development within the surrounding areas. The proposed street extensions, the proposed street extensions do connect to the existing street network. The proposed development does have direct access to Clara Drive, which is a township road that has sufficient capacity to serve the development. Many of those commercial uses use Clara Road as a service road where that's used for loading and unloading. And then finally, that the proposal is consistent with the intent and purpose of the zoning resolution. As it pertains to the variation for the fence height, again, staff finds that it's appropriate as it's going to allow the applicant to sufficiently screen the proposed parking area. And as it pertains to the landscape buffer, it's in the interest of Colerain Township to retain ownership of that land. And then the conditions of approval ensure that the fencing and screening will be provided to effectively screen the proposed off-street parking area. That's all for the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Iona. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Iona? Hearing none, we do have to go through if you'll notice, please, that the applicant here is the Colerain Township trustees. So if I say, is there an applicant here to give us a presentation, you just heard it. So We do have to request a motion to open public hearing. If I could have a motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
And
second.
a second.
I will second.
It's been moved and approved to open public hearing. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Faring,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Grody.
Yes. And there are no persons present for public hearing?
I will go check.
So, Mr. Iona, there was,
There's nobody to speak. He needs his flash drive here.
okay. Hearing that, can we have a motion to close public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Second.
second. Mrs. Smith, second.
Okay. Mr. Dieters, could you call roll?
Commissioner Faring,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Grody.
Yes. Okay, is there any further discussion on the part of the commissioners? Then I will entertain a motion, whoever wishes to formulate one.
I will make a motion to approve case ZA 2021-02 for the zone change from R7 to PDB with the recommendations of the staff and the variances that the staff recommends.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Yes. I'll
Okay.
second.
Is there any further discussion on the part of the commissioners about the motion on the floor? The only question I have, Mr. Iona, is assuming this is approved and you communicate that back to the client that's interested in this property, what's that client's next step? A preliminary development plan or a final development plan?
This was the preliminary development plan. The next step's the final development plan.
Okay, so it'll come back
It
before us?
will, yes, no
Okay.
matter what.
All right.
It always comes back here for the final development plan.
One last chance. Questions? Mr. Wilson?
If I could, I'm just curious if the commissioners think that point E of the recommendations is sufficiently specific. The additional landscape be provided throughout the park is necessary to mitigate any issues associated with the proposed construction of the off-street parking area. Is that sufficiently specific that additional landscape should be provided, or should there be some specification about what that landscape looks like or is?
Mr. Iona?
The reason it is a little bit loose, you could say, is that the final development plan will come through, and that's something that we can hone in on. We do the same process for final development plans that we do for these. We do a pre-app where we sit down, we hash out what you all recommended, the conditions that you all put on it, the conditions and recommendations of the Board of Trustees, and then everything that was basically said at the hearing throughout the preliminary development plan and zone change process. So if you have any recommendations for what that could look like, it's certainly something that staff is interested in and that we could convey at that time if it was approved. But that is why we did put it in loosely, because hopefully by the final development plan, they're going to have a lot more information about, the specifics of, is there a retaining wall needed? How much fill will be needed? What's the fencing heights and things like that?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Faring,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Grody.
Yes, the motion is carried unanimously. So on to the next step then with Mr. Iona, with the applicant.
Certainly.
Okay, our next item is case ZA 2020-05. It's a text amendment regarding massage parlors and massage therapy. If you'll remember, This was tabled from our December meeting, and so I asked Mr. Iona if he has a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a presentation. The applicant here is the Colerain Township Board of Trustees. This is a township-wide text amendment to the zoning resolution, and the intention is to regulate massage parlors and massage therapy by adding adding definitions for both of those types of uses, and then adding specific regulations for where some of those uses can be. When we created this, the impetus really was from, other townships throughout the state have had issues with massage parlor businesses becoming an attractive nuisance for illegal activities. This was something that Trustee Wallert felt strongly enough about, that we don't have enough regulation here in Colerain Township to protect the public health, safety, welfare. So the trustees took a vote on it, and they asked us to go ahead and figure out how we can best regulate these to protect the public health, safety, welfare, and make sure if you're doing a massage-related business in Colerain Township that you're doing it above board, and you're doing it in a legal manner. So that's kind of where the impetus for this text amendment came from. The draft language within the text amendment was created using a lot of methodology. We did a careful consideration of the community. We did an inventory of regulations and issues that other communities in the region and across the state have faced, and regulations that they have. We've done outreach to communication with planning departments, and then we've also taken the review process through our legal counsel for review. It's not a large text amendment, but I think it does enough to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. And again, that is to ensure that any massage-related business in Colerain Township is operating in a manner that's not illegal, and it's above board. And the moving parts are really the two definitions that we've added in the zoning resolution: massage parlor and massage therapy. And what we do here is we differentiate between the illegal massage parlor and then what a legal massage business looks like. So what's an illegal massage business, and what is what is an acceptable massage business? And the illegal massage business is that massage parlor. That's the top of this slide, and that is specifically defined as a sexually oriented business where for any form or consideration or gratuity, massage, alcohol rub, electric or magnetic treatments, or any other treatment or manipulation of the human body which occurs as part of or in connection with sexual activities as defined in ORC 297-01 subsection C. And that is kind of like it's the Bible essentially for sexually oriented businesses and ORC statutes. It's got all the legal terminology for what constitutes a sexually oriented business, and any accessory uses to those sexually oriented business. And then it goes on to say, or where any person's providing such treatment, manipulation, or service thereto exposes his or her specified anatomical areas as set forth again in ORC. And it says that any massage parlor that meets this definition is just not permitted in Colerain Township. And why is that? Well, that's because the definition is of something where you're doing you're performing a sexual service for compensation, and that's just illegal. So this definition makes that illegal. It's in our zoning resolution, and it clearly defines that. We don't have that definition right now. So it adds something that specifically calls out the bad actors that could come into a community under this use. And it has happened in other communities where a massage parlor comes in, they apply for a massage parlor or whatever it is in that community, and they open up a business, and they again, it becomes an attractive nuisance for illegal activity. So what we have here is got a clear definition for what we don't want. And then if you go to the second definition, it's massage therapy. These are the things that are legal. It's the practice of a massage in a licensed, and that's the big thing in this definition is licensed. Are people licensed? We want to have licensed operations, not unlicensed individuals just opening up a massage operation. So the key part of that definition is licensed. And again, it's the practice of massage in a licensed hospital by a licensed chiropractor, masseur, masseuse, osteopath, by any nurse or technician working under the supervision of a licensed physician, surgeon, chiropractor, or osteopath, by trainers for any amateur, semi-professional, or professional athlete or athletic team or school athletic program. Massage therapy is the scientific manipulation of the soft tissues of the body for the purposes of normalizing those tissues and consists of manual techniques that include applying fixed or movable pressure, holding, and or causing movement of or to the body. And again, the big thing with the second definition, what we want to have is, we want to have that licensed, those licensed businesses that are associated with, a medical or practice or a holistic medical practice. So that's how we break the two up. And then we go on to permit massage therapy in those same zoning districts. So if you looked at the zoning chart in your attachment, we permit those zoning districts in the same, we permit massage therapy in the same zoning districts that we permit other medical and dental uses. So, we view massage therapy as a medical service. We want to permit it where other medical services are permitted, and that's why we added it as a permitted use to the B1, B2, B3, and O1 zoning district. Staff is recommending approval of the proposed text amendment, and that's based on the following. Again, it's going to provide regulations that ensure massage services are being performed in a manner that's legal and consistent with the intent and purpose of the zoning resolution. The text amendment will provide regulations that ensure massage services are being done in a manner that protects the public health, safety, and welfare. One of the great things about the proposed text amendment is that it does use ORC references, which makes it, the proposed text amendment, more legally defensible for administrative and enforcement purposes. The proposed text amendment also safeguards against illegal activities associated with bad actors or unlicensed massage operators by requiring a license. And then finally, the proposed text amendment is not going to adversely impact massage therapy uses as they are permitted in the same zoning district as other medical and dental uses. So if you own a massage therapy, if this isn't a punitive text amendment, you're going to be permitted in the same district under the same code as other medical and dental uses. And that's all for the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Iona. Questions for Mr. Iona? Mr. Wilson?
Are unlicensed massage therapists currently allowed in Colerain Township? Is that the distinction that this amendment is making?
Currently, there is no distinction. As part of administrative procedure, we do currently ask for licensure, but this really clarifies what is and what isn't legal.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we have to go through the public hearing part again, so I need a motion to open public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and approved. Can we have a roll call, please?
Motion to open the public hearing. Commissioner Fairing.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Commissioner Grody.
Yes.
Motion passes.
To your knowledge, do we have anybody? Okay, we need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we close.
I'll second.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Motion to close the public hearing. Commissioner Fairing.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Commissioner Grody.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Any further commission discussion? Then yes, Mr. Wilson.
Minor question. There are two ORCs mentioned here. One is 297.01, one is 2907.01. I'm just wondering, is that a possible typo?
I have it
Very-
here if you'd like to look at it there.
Very good question. It is not, though. No.
Okay. Just wanted to check.
No, very good. I appreciate that.
It's
Yes.
a typo, I
No.
think, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, I think it's a typo because I looked it up myself. I was almost positive it was.
Oh, okay. No, that is correct. No, that is correct. Yes. We will remove
But if
that
anybody
typo.
would like to see the Ohio Revised, it's right here. Okay, At this time, I would entertain someone making a motion of some sort regarding case ZA 2020-05, text amendment.
I'll make a motion to approve ZA 202-05 text amendment for massage parlors and massage therapy.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Further discussion regarding the motion. Everybody understand what has been proposed? May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Fairing?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Grody?
Yes, the motion passes. Okay, moving on with our agenda. Mr. Iona, do we have anything for items 6, 7, 8, 9, 10?
We do not.
Do not. Next meeting.
Next meeting will be March 16th. Yes.
So we do have
We do
things
have
on
an
the agenda?
application there. It will be a final development plan
Okay,
for the Springdale development.
okay. So it's a couple weeks away.
Yes.
Okay. Could we have a motion to adjourn, please?
I will make that motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? I want to stay. Thank you, everybody. It was a good meeting.